¿Qué hubo? Buenas noches. Como avisé previamente y en la descripción mencionamos que iba a hacer la transmisión en inglés. Ya tengo aquí mis invitados listos, entonces vamos a comenzar en inglés. Va a ser de una manera más fluida para ellos. Entonces, ojalá y me puedan seguir o nos puedan seguir con la conversación. Este, de hecho, voy a comenzar desde ahorita porque la introducción es muy importante para ellos también. Entonces, okay, thank you for being with us tonight. I hope you had a great week, great Thursday, almost weekend. I have my drink still, so it doesn't matter. I work out long time, so it's worth it. um, Today's subject, it's not like a subject in general, but we're going to talk about a certain topic. It's a lot, I related a lot to what's going on our side of the country, in Mexico. We're living this change after 40, 50 years of this type of government or regiment that we had. And 2 years ago, finally, millions and millions went out to vote and went for a change, wanted to see something different from what was promised to us back in 2000 when we had this change and we chose a new party and came out to be the same thing. So it was just like an alliance with the previous party. It came out to be worse, actually. Then the old party came back, and now we're living this fourth transformation, he's calling it, because we've lived three throughout our history, and he's calling this 6-year period as in the fourth transformation. But the opposition, or this other side that wants the power back, is using these kind of old strategies, and that I see a lot of similarities in the US. I see a lot of these, let's say, information or misinformation tactics. Social networks are becoming like the biggest weapon right now. And it's the same on our side. They're trying to give false information to people that don't have access probably to the internet or probably to these other sources of information. So they rely on mainstream, and mainstream is just saying what they want, right? Or they're receiving probably some kind of funding from these old parties so they can kind of make this new government look bad. And again, I see a lot of similarities on the other side. Why am I talking about the other side? I live in Tijuana. I'm right next to the US. I was raised with CBS, ABC, PBS. We had all these channels. So Mr. Rogers was a big thing in my childhood. Sesame Street, all of these shows. So music, I learned a lot of music from that side, from radio in the US. So I learned a lot, and in a way, I appreciate being so close to them that I can just cross the border whenever I choose to and go see a band. But it worries me. It's been worrying me, this situation that I see they're going through, just like we're going through on our side. So I wanted to invite friends that live over there on that side. I can't give an opinion of what's going on that side since I can't even cross, since I'm just a tourist. My visa doesn't enable me to cross to the US because of the pandemic. So only US citizens or residents can cross. But let's start with my guests. Let's start ladies first, of course. And we're going to give a welcome to Norma, my cousin that is in Las Vegas. Hello, Norma. How are you doing?
Hi.
You were with us like a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, and we just had a great chat talking about what you're doing today, what you used to do, playing video games as a job. But if you want, just tell them a little intro of what you do and what you think about what I just said.
Sure. So I work currently in a funeral home. I used to be a video game tester a couple years back. So I've only been in the funeral home for about 1 year. There is about in so I grew up in Vegas. I've been living here for the last, I want to say, 24 years. Originally born in Cali. Both my parents were born and raised in Mexico, immigrated, became citizens through naturalization. So going to the topic that most likely going to be discussing, there is a lot of misinformation and a lot of people that are very easily swayed by a lot of sources, a lot of clickbaiting, a lot of social media, Facebook posts, and things like that. And a lot of people have, from what I've seen, grown very lazy when it comes to doing your own research and actually attempting to research whether or not something is true or not. So, but aside from that, I'm actually very excited to be a part of this again and actually get to discuss things in this topic with like as an open discussion and everything.
Yeah, I needed to. I've been debating this a lot with Yuri and with a couple of friends, but we're on this side, so it's just like our point of view. But we don't get to see all of this information you guys are getting from the media. You're experiencing this in the streets or with people around you. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So thank you again for joining us, Norma. Our next guest is actually a loved one, another loved one in Norma's life. Let's say hi to Dan, a fox named Papi.
What's up, guys?
Thank you for joining us.
Of course.
If you want to give us a small intro, we just met actually before we went live, but if you want, just give a small intro of how you met Norma and what's your background to her.
Sure. Well, my name's Dan. Fox named Poppy is an online handle that I use for a lot of different things. So in case other people are looking, they're like, "Oh, I know that guy." So Norma and I actually met online. The Poppy thing is actually a reference to how we met. She as a visual artist, she was a member of a particular website where she was able to upload and broadcast her artwork. I'm not an artist myself, but I'm a fan, and that's actually how we met in the first place. I liked her artwork. I thought she was a cool person, and I got to talking to her at that time. Long story short, losing contact and getting back into contact later on, and we reconnected over social media. That grew into an online relationship, which then became an in-person relationship, long distance, which then became a close distance relationship when I moved from New York City to Las Vegas. And the wedding's still on. We're scheduled to be married next spring. So we're looking forward to that. I actually just did some planning where took a week in Mexico. Got all that planning out of the way. Had a chance to really kind of cement down some of the details.
And that was his first visit too.
Yeah. So, but in terms of the topic at hand, I can't really speak for Mexican politics. It's not an area that I have a ton of information in. But in American politics, one of the things that we've been seeing, especially lately, because people talk about misinformation, and I think it's important to acknowledge that it's not necessarily misinformation, but disinformation. It's intentional. People are going out of their way to mislead and lie to the public in order for them to be robbed of a fuller, comprehensive understanding of the topics at hand. And I think it needs to be called out as such. The fact that that Mark Zuckerberg, has documented ties to right-wing sources and staunch conservatives cannot be ignored. The fact that those people were allowed free reign on social media and were caught literally putting out false information, lies, straight up lies, going out of their way to pursue a disinformation campaign for the sake of the Republican presidential campaign cannot be ignored. Has to be dealt with as such. There's a lot to be said about mainstream media, and I think one of the biggest disasters. Goodness, everything is relative, obviously, but the demonization of the media and mainstream media by popular politicians has been disastrous for this country, because there's still a lot of really good work. And one of the things that somebody needs to be aware of is the necessity for critical thinking. We've never been told to, explicitly, to take what we hear from the media wholesale and never question it. Part of being a critical thinking person or somebody who's involved in critical thinking is realizing that sources matter, realizing that the media has a particular goal and that it needs to be understood like in the context of the information they're presenting. It has to all come together. Now, to that end, there are some media outlets who are more committed to accurate reporting than others. As a brief, for instance, we can get into this later, but most recently in court, Fox News presented this defense and won in court, saying that their popular news host Tucker Carlson is not accurate, is not truthful, and anybody who watches his shows and is familiar with his work should know to be skeptical of the thing that he says. This is a news network. And literally in court, their defense was, this guy's track record is so sketchy, you should know to take everything he says with a grain of salt. So you have to think about the duplicitousness, the two-sidedness of presenting this information as gospel and allowing somebody like that to speak to the nation uncensored, unfettered. And then at the same time, when it comes down to legality and when it comes down to them being held accountable for their actions, say, man, you got to know this guy really doesn't, you got to take everything he says with a grain of salt. That's intentional. That's absolutely purposeful. And you can't downplay the maliciousness of that kind of action. But like I said, we can get into this later. I don't want to rob everybody's time with this intro. So
no worries. No worries. You're mentioning something that we're going through right now. You're supposed, when you go to the news, it's supposed to be something neutral. It's just information, just facts. But when you start taking a side or when you start giving a point of view as a newscast or as a newspaper, I think you're missing the point of being this source of information, not a point of view, right? Like
I don't necessarily agree, but we can get into that later.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, and I love what you're saying, dude. And next up, it's a childhood friend back in we can say what it was in 1986, probably 1985. But let's welcome in Eric. Eric, how you doing, bro?
Hey, what's up, Monk? How are you?
How you doing? Give them a little bit of a intro. What do you remember of our childhood, or when was it? It was 85, 86, probably?
Mid-80s, probably. Yeah, you were my cousin's neighbor. We used to play a lot of basketball with you.
Yeah.
And I've been watching a lot of your podcasts, man. I'm glad you finally had one in English because I'm not sure about my, I speak Spanish okay, but I don't know if I could defend myself too well. But now we've known each other for a long time. You're definitely one of my best friends. As far as myself, I've always been interested in competitive gaming, which eventually led me to play poker on a serious level. And
you got me into poker. I remember that.
For the past few years, live poker, but with the pandemic and all, it's been kind of hard to play live because a lot of places closed, and there's a lot of the places that are open, they're really compact, and I just kind of don't want to risk it too much. So I've just kind of been laying low, and I am looking forward to talking some politics as well, because even though I'm not that immersed in that field, I do read a lot of articles and definitely have my opinions. I agree with a lot of what Fox. Is it a fox named Poppy or Poppy or what do you prefer?
The running gag is that my online nickname is Poppy, but Dan works just fine.
Dan.
Yeah.
Dan. Got it. So no, I'm definitely looking forward to the topics you bring up, and I'm finally very happy to finally be on one of your episodes. Thanks for being English, Monk.
No problem. Yeah, I wanted you to be on MMA. I mean, you love MMA as much as I do.
I love MMA too. Yeah,
you love it as an art and as a sport, but I understand that sometimes you speak Spanish super good, but you can get problems.
Sometimes you get certain words get stuck, and you're like, oh, how do I say this correctly?
Yeah. I'm gonna say hi to my cousin Luis Araujo. He's also your cousin, Norma. He's a son of Tia Irma. So he's Luis Araujo. Saludos, dude. What's up? And Edades, welcome. Good evening. And yes, what Yudi said, yes, totally. You're, wow, a beautiful woman. And we just saw her earlier in another podcast. We just have her here as an in the chat. But wow, we finally got to meet her tonight, and one of her casts is, wow, it's just really beautiful. Yeah, actually, Gertrudis got to meet her her boyfriend. She got blessed. Oh, man. Hey, what's up, dude? Welcome to the cast. You should get it. You're good at English, so yeah. See you tomorrow. And tell the other guys he's going to be on tomorrow's cast. But last but not least, a great friend, and actually cousin from Eric, and we also met a long time ago. Here we got Omar. Omar from New York City. Actually, we didn't mention Eric is in San Diego, but Omar is in New York City. How about you give them a small intro of our background and our history?
Our background and our history. Yeah, well, so basically, I mean, so my cousin Alex, he was your neighbor, and so that's how we met. I mean, I honestly don't remember how old I was or we were when we met, but I mean, we were kids, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we would play
6-year-old.
basketball. We would go to the beach together. We would spend the summers together. So yeah, that's a very super condensed history.
Yeah, super like, whoa, it's a big one. But yeah, about what I was talking about. You're a programmer. You're into computer stuff and all this information. And but what do you think about this that I was talking about? Dan was talking about disinformation, not misinformation. But what do you think about that's going on right now in social networks or mainstream media?
Yeah, well, okay, so I'm not an expert in politics or.
None of us are. At least I'm not. Eric's not. No, we're not. But it's our point of view. That's what I love about it. That you guys are on that side and you guys are living it. Because I have my point of view, but I am on this side. So that's what I wanted you guys. And you're in this big city. That, wow, dude. Again, last year that you took us around, it was amazing, dude. We'll never forget it.
Oh, yeah, it was awesome. Hopefully, you'll make it back again. Soon.
Oh, Yudi said so much. Love your no look. Yeah, man, dude. Big hugs to Norma and Dan. Congrats on your future wedding. Eric and Omar, love you, brothers. Yeah. But yeah, no, we're not experts, dude. If it were that case, I would get some sociology or politics guys. But no. We're all just normal people that you guys have to work and everything. So,
I mean, so what I can tell you, my perspective is that, yeah, so it is like a serious problem. Misinformation or disinformation or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's not just social networks. Just nowadays we're just bombarded with media coming from everywhere, and that's where we're getting our news. Is from social media and different places, and like here in the U.S. right now, like the country's going through a lot of it's going through like a very difficult time, and things are very politicized. And obviously, so the pandemic is has affected like every single country, but that's kind of like accentuated or made things worse, and also with Black Lives Matter and kind of like the racial tensions that we've been having this last year. I mean, it's just basically the aspect of misinformation has become very important, and I see it not just in social media, but it's nowadays, like, we're connected in many different ways. So for example, here in New York City, I'm part of a bunch of different WhatsApp groups or Facebook Messenger groups for dancers, because I take
salsa.
Because I take salsa and bachata lessons, and so there's a bunch of people right in these groups, and a lot of people will share like news. For example, earlier in the pandemic when things were locked down, a lot of people would share like articles about COVID-19, and like what you should do or what you shouldn't do. And many times, I mean, the things that people shared were trash. And it's not just that, but it's also just different kinds of articles and like politics, and you see it everywhere, right? I mean, it's not just in social media, but it's just everywhere. Like search, for example, Google search is also very important because many times that's where you go to search for stuff. That's the first place where we go to search for something, and so the kind of results that you get can basically, they determine, right, what you end up consuming in terms of information. And so I work with Google, and I know that for them. So I don't speak on behalf of them. What I say is basically my own. But they give a lot of importance to basically providing kind of like accurate information. But so that's basically my own, so I'm not very, I'm not an expert on it, and so I'm not exactly sure like what needs to happen or what can be done to combat misinformation. But what I do know is that it is important, and it is having an impact in our lives. Because I mean, I see it. Like I see just like coming at me from everywhere, and I know it's the same way for everyone else. We're just bombarded, with,
Totally. Yeah.
Different sources of information, and I mean, sometimes it's just hard to know which one's accurate and which one's legitimate. Because I mean, if you really want to find out, then you have to dig in, right? And I mean, we just don't have, time to dig in, with every single piece of information that we find.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, I mean, we just have to kind of like make an educated guess as to which one, what information is legitimate and which one is not. And I guess this comes down to critical thinking that Dan was talking about, is being a critical thinker. And I think it's important to question, when we confront some information, we need to be critical about it. We need to to think, okay, so where is it coming from? What's the motivation, for I don't know, these for this information being provided? We just need to be very critical, with information, because I mean, it's we want to believe in kind of like authoritative figures who put out these sources of information. But as Dan was saying, many times these people have an agenda. And even when people don't have an agenda, I mean, sometimes people are just kind of, I mean, they're not very well educated, or they're putting out their side, right? But there's usually, I mean, almost always there's another side to the story, right? And so overall, I would say that it is kind of like a very real and legitimate problem in society today. Here in the U.S. where I live, and New York City where I live, and I definitely think that we need to be very critical with different sources of information that we consume.
Yeah, and you just mentioned something that we've been mentioning in other episodes related to whole other topics, but it's going to the easy thing, right? If I see it in a post, and if it's my neighbor's, well, you know what? He's kind of got a good opinion, so it's got to be right. But sometimes we got to get a second, third, fourth opinion. We got to be careful where we're getting our information, and not go, as you said, with these posts or these chains or links that people are just like resending or reposting, where you don't even know where the source is coming from or where it's coming from. But we got a comment right here, very interesting. Me da gusto ver y escuchar por este medio a Eric, mi hijo, y a Omar, mi sobrino. Creo que felicidades, Manuel, y saludos a los 4 entrevistados. Saludos. Es, si no me equivoco,
Es mi mamá.
es tu mamá. I just wanted you to clear it up for us here. But as Judy says, fake news is the most easy thing to do. A lie that is repeated by all the local news becomes true to those that are too busy to research the truth, right? They'll just go for the first thing that comes up, and they'll
even see. But like, that's anecdotally correct. But the notion that mainstream media outlets are just perpetrating lies is like, that narrative serves certain people, and more often than not, the people who are pushing that narrative are the people who are guilty of doing it in the first place. Like, who are the people going on and on about fake news? Which, you know, fake news is historically been a fascist concept. So that's getting, you know, you can dig into your history and find that out. Like, it's anecdotally correct, right? The idea is that if a lie gets repeated often enough, people assume it's true. But more often than not, there's only a handful of people actually doing the lying. So you vet your sources. And you make sure that you know where that information is coming from, and have multiple sources. So if you're only watching, I mean, it's one of the reasons that conservative news outlets get as bad as they get, because it's insular. You have people there, you know, the kind of person that watches Fox News on a regular basis is only watching Fox News. They're not watching something else. They're not getting alternative viewpoints. They're not hearing anything else except the propaganda machine that's just completely and constantly spewing lies and nonsense and all sorts of falsehoods. So, like, that's one of those things that's like, it's true, but I don't like the idea of that just kind of being left out of the ether like it's universally true, because that's not necessarily the case. And treating it like it is, more often than not, benefits those who would use that for their own endeavors.
Okay, gotcha. Hey, you guys, feel free open to it. There's not going to be an order if you just want to come in, just and keep it going. But I was going to mention what you just said, Dan. On our side over here in Mexico, for years, it was just 2 TV stations. Or back, if we go back 30 years, it was 1 probably, and you had these other kind of like, but the news was in 1 or a couple channels, and all of these were manipulated or controlled by the government back then. And I remember you guys, I don't know if they're the same thing, but I remember ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC, but CNN eventually. But I remember, you should remember this, Conan had this sketch about these newscasts that would repeat the same thing, as it was a script that was being spread out nationally all over the newscasts. And he would make it like a sketch because it was funny, but eventually after a minute it became scary that all of these anchors and newscasters were saying the same exact thing in different states, and you would say, what the hell, I just heard this in another. So, but what I was getting to is you have a little bit more of, let's say, sources, as in channels. I call them channels, ABC and all of these, but we don't use any TV no more. We all get it from the internet. Do you think in the U.S. is there a big percentage that is getting their information from the internet and not giving any attention to the mainstream? And whoever wants to come into that, go ahead. Norma, go ahead. Yeah.
I was like, I think that's a matter of there's a generational divide when you get into that conversation. The majority of young people, in my experience, and as well as the experience of people who poll and ask these questions, they find that the majority of young people get their information off online, whether it's via social media, whether it's via connections that they have on the internet. When you start getting into the older generations, you start seeing that transition away from social media and the internet and to harder sources, whether it's TV, cable news, or those things. And a lot of that just kind of speaks to the generational gap. I think about my parents. About my parents have this innate distrust of the internet because they grew up in a world that didn't have it. They didn't. I was born in '87. I'm part of that generation that saw that transition from a pre-internet world to a post-internet world. I grew up with it. I have no problem utilizing the internet for information, to vet my sources, to gain that information. A lot of that older generation is looking for something that they know. They're looking for something that's familiar. So if they've been watching the same news channel for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, they're going to keep going to that same news channel because they trust them. And they're going to trust what they have to say because they've allowed themselves to believe there's a certain amount of consistency. You see that especially in local news, how even in New York City, you have a handful of reporters and people who worked for like CBS, NBC, more recently on cable news, or relatively recently New York One, how there's like household names and there's people that like, oh, I recognize that person. I know they do good journalism. And there's a lot of people like that. There's a lot of really good journalists out there that are doing tons of fantastic work. The problem is that if you don't know who they are and you don't know where people are getting their sources from, you either, one, aren't finding them, or two, running into people who pretend to be solid journalists when really they're just peddling propaganda nonsense.
No, just to jump on what Dan said, I definitely agree with the generational gap. Someone like my father, for example, he doesn't trust Facebook at all. He's like, don't get on Facebook. But he's used to just watching like what he watched, the regular news at night, and he's a little less hesitant to find news through the internet. And I think the younger generation does have an advantage in terms of finding news on the internet, because you can check many more sources. There's many more avenues to either confirm or weed out the bullshit, if you will. But there's a lot of older people, family members, and older people in general that I know that just stick to their Fox News, like you said, or CNN, and they just kind of take it for truth, and they it's kind of what they know. And I think the younger generation in that sense does have an advantage in terms of weeding out, and in terms of finding different sources, in terms of getting through the BS and trying to find out if people do have ulterior motives, or if they really are speaking the truth. And so I think, technology does have its good and bad side, but overall, I think it's more good because it allows you to have a more kind of defined, well-rounded opinion. It allows you to search better for the truth, if you will. And I would definitely agree with that assessment. Yeah.
Totally. Norma, do you think that do people still get the news from TV, or as they said, no, it's a generation gap, but do you think that younger generations do get the news from the mainstream, or they go to social media?
I do think that the younger generation does have a tendency to go more towards not so much social media, just more of internet sources, which is a big advantage in regards to fact checking. That's why they can call out their parents whenever they're not well informed about something. But also to that end, I do think that the older generation, there are some who are very curious about the internet, but at the same time they lack the knowledge of how to manage through the saturation of information. For example, my dad, I just made him a Facebook account like a couple months ago before the pandemic, and he believes a lot of the stuff on Facebook that he sees. He's curious, and he watches clips, and he's constantly like watching video after video after video, looking at photo after photo, and this and this. But it's like he swallows a lot of the information because he's not well informed, and he lacks that sort of I want to say education, like how to handle the internet, especially how advanced it is right now. My mom, she definitely watches more of her news on the TV, and she, like Dan had said about like specific like anchors and news people, she trusts a lot of what Jorge Ramos has to say because he has been so prominent, and he like kind of exactly. So she's very big on like whatever he says and whatever his opinion is, because he's very direct with his questions when he interviews people. so she has a tendency to kind of like, so she already is biased in regards to which news anchors she wants to listen to, and she does get a lot of her news from the TV. Occasionally she'll come to me though and be like, hey, I saw this on TV, is it true or not? Like, can you fact check? And then I fact check it. So she's a little bit more open-minded in that regard. While my dad, he's very like I'm gonna get my news from the TV, and also Facebook posts, because he is curious and he is like kind of exploring that world, but he doesn't know how to really.
Yeah,
navigate.
it's crazy. It's crazy that you mentioned right now Jorge Ramos, who are guys that are watching us. You know, this guy Jorge Ramos was back when these past governments were in power. He would always ask tough questions. He would expose them, and he would go in attacking, like as you said, like direct and attacking. And he would get kicked out or like banned or whatever. And now that there's this change, he came back years after. He like there's free speech again. There's everything's cool now, even though reporters are still in other states are getting killed and stuff. But this is statewide. But there's still corruption like in little levels still down there. But Jorge Ramos came and attacked and came in a position like, you know what, you suck. Not sucking, but he exposed the president as in like making him look bad. And you're like, wait, dude, you were opposed to this past government, but this is when you see this the people.
There's someone who's like there's someone who's trying to make change, and now you're attacking him. I thought you were pro at this. Like, what's going on? Where's the like we thought you were like on his side. Like, what's going on? You know, because he always constantly asks the hard questions, and to a degree, like that's okay. But then at the same time, it's like,
well, the thing is, like, being like as a journalist, your obligation is to get to the truth no matter what it is. The one thing that we don't want to do is embrace clannishness, you know, like, but that's, you see that it's in full display in American politics, where it's this idea of, you know, us versus them, and because the other people are wrong, we're right. And to the extent that like any criticism levied against us must be support for the other side, which isn't the case. The whole idea is that people in positions of power should always be held accountable to the people, always, unequivocally, without question and without hesitation. That's the responsibility that they have to us as citizens when they embrace the power that we give them, because the only reason they have that power is because we give it to them within a democracy, right? So if they, like, what we're going to do and what we have to do is hold their ass to the fire all the time, constantly. And people go, oh man, but how do you expect somebody to work? I expect them to do their job because it's their job. And if you're doing something in the midst of your job that's not in the best interest of the general population, you deserve to have your ass held to the fire for that. It's one of the reasons that I got so frustrated during the previous presidency, because people, you know, there were a lot of people who didn't like Obama, and they didn't like him for very ignorant reasons. People, oh, he was the worst president. The economy was bad under him. Jobs were bad under him. He didn't like. That's all factually incorrect. Like, just say that you're racist and go. I'm not here to waste my time. My thing is, there was still a ton of very real criticism that can and should have been levied against Obama during his presidency. Yes, he was the first black president. Yes, he did a lot of good things when he was in office, but he also, you know, furthered the reach of the Patriot Act. He was directly and personally responsible for the loss of freedoms for millions upon millions of Americans. He personally was in charge when drones were out and murdering people overseas as well as in this country. I go back and I talk about the fact that you had the two snipers in DC, I believe, and they ordered the freaking drone strike to like take down the guy. And everybody was like, yeah, awesome. And I'm like, do you not understand that you just allowed the president to extrajudicially murder someone? Like, yeah, he was obviously doing something wrong, but you just allowed this man to set an incredibly dangerous precedent. But no, because Obama, it must be right. It must be a good thing. And I'm like, you can't, like, politicians are not your friends. This isn't about being nice. It's not about teams. Like, this isn't a sport. It's not a game. Politicians like to pretend it is because a lot of times their interests are mutually shared. And even though they pretend to play opposite sides of the field, they're really after the same prize. The whole idea is that politicians, if we're going to have people in positions of power over us as citizens, then they should be regularly and ruthlessly held accountable within those positions of power. And if they refuse to utilize those positions for the well-being of everyone, they should be removed post haste. So, like, I don't have a problem with a journalist going ham on one side or the other. For me, that's a good journalist. That's somebody who's committed to truth and accuracy and justice instead of clannishness. If you think about it, like if you have a reporter who's going, who had nothing to say to Obama, and then all of a sudden wants to pick a fight with Trump, then like, well, what's different? Why weren't you doing your job 4 years ago, 6 years ago? You still have the same job. Is the truth not important, even though there's a Democrat in office? Like, what are you doing? What standards are we holding our politicians to? I expect that from any reputable news outlet. I expect that from anybody who would dare call themselves a journalist. Like, within this system, that is one of the most powerful positions you can have, because your job is literally to hold the most powerful people in the country to task for the people. Like, I can't go and yell in Trump's face as much as I would like to. I can't do that. I'm just a regular bald-headed Puerto Rican dude who happens to live in Las Vegas. But somebody who works for a major news outlet, who has their credentials, who can sit there and hold that man to task and ask him those questions, and why are you allowing this to happen, and why are you choosing this, and why are you continually lying, and X, Y, and Z. That person is my mouthpiece. He's doing the stuff that I want to do. He's doing the stuff that I should be able to do, but I can't do it logistically. Therefore, I want that person to be an absolute pit bull all the time. I'm not saying he's got to be an asshole, but somebody who's unwilling to hold everyone to that standard, regardless of political affiliation, is not someone that I want to representing me in doing that job.
Yeah, and he says it. No, there's this, they say that these reporters are there to question authority. That's their job, right? Even though it's maybe they agree with them, but they're still there to question whatever they think is going wrong, or probably point out these things. And
absolutely,
as you said, not take sides, kind of like be neutral and just bring the facts out. Even better if you can bring it up from the president himself, right? Our president is doing something that I haven't ever seen ever in the world. That daily at 6 a.m. he gets up and gives this press conference, answers questions from the press, freedom of speech. If you want to attack me, bring it. And he says he bats 300. He's a great baseball player, so he's always says, what, bring it, I'll bat it back to you. So and yeah, daily he's informing and receiving all these attacks, and in a way he just like bats them back up. But Omar, let's hear a little bit about I want to go into this. I've been feeling this kind of tension on that side of the border, on the US, and pandemic, I think, has been a big influence in this tension that I've been living it over here in TJ. Whenever I go driving out, there's this, like, whatever you do, people will react and furiously or be like pissed for whatever. But do you feel in New York? I mean, we were a year ago and people aren't like I was telling Dan, I lived these experiences over there a year ago that that they're not that friendly, or I remember I asked this lady, "Hey, can I use your lighter?" And she was, and she just kept going. And I was like, "Damn, I just wanted to." You remember that?
What noise did she make, Monk?
She just kept going. I was like, "What?" I was like with my smoke, like, "What the?" And Omar said, like, "It's normal, dude. People are like, they're not cool here." Omar was like, "I'm used to it." Nah, no es cierto, no. I'm just kidding. But do you feel that there's a tension? Let's compare a year ago that we went around. You've been going around with family and friends. You're always going around on your bike. Do you feel that there's a tension growing in New York? Because we feel it on the west side. Well, at least on the west coast, I've been seeing a little bit more of movements and protests than on the east coast. But you being in New York, do you feel that there's some kind of tension growing between everyone?
So tension. Do you mean just because of the pandemic and just kind of like people?
Pandemic and Black Lives Matter. Let's
People
say,
being tense, basically.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, definitely. I mean, like everywhere, I think people are fed up, of being at home and being locked up and
and you probably I mean tension. Let's say another one. Let's say pandemic. Let's say Black Lives Matter, and elections. These three are kind of like making this pot like a steam pot and about to like blow. That's what kind of like what I'm feeling, that people are super ignited by whatever. And I saw the other day this picture of a guy on a bike with a gun pointing a guy in his car pointing a gun to the guy in the bike. So they're both like in a standoff, and it's like, hey, it's legal, but damn, it's crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think everything started with the pandemic, obviously, and things being like closed up. So on the streets, I mean, people are more like wary of other people, and you just it's easy to tell just because, for one, obviously, I mean, people are wearing masks, which, I mean, it's something that, we're doing for the first time in our lives.
Like
being outside, going to the for groceries or to the market or something, and having to put on a mask.
And I mean, these Karens are like the thing now. These
Karens.
like they're calling them Karens, right? People that are like getting these. Wow, it's crazy, these reactions. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, and you see people, like avoiding you, like if you're walking, like towards each other, you might see someone kind of like going like trying to avoid you, so creating some distance between each other, to avoid getting close to you, and so just things like that.
I can't believe people try doing that in New York.
Or for example, I started going to the gym, and they're making us wear masks inside the gym, and I have to cover like my nose and my mouth. And so people are, they're kind of like watching you, or if they're not watching you, you feel like you're being watched.
Yeah.
You feel like if you like, I feel that if I just kind of like put down my mask and just leave it down, that someone is gonna come and tell me to put it on. Maybe not even someone who works at the gym, but just like someone. And I mean, that makes sense, right? Because I mean, no one wants to get sick, no one wants to get infected. But yeah, so that's so yeah, there's a lot of tension, and also just build up tension from being locked in and socially distant and stuff like that. And I would say with the Black Lives Matter, so that was pretty intense here in New York City. I didn't experience it that much because I didn't go out into the protest or in the streets when we had the protest here in New York City. But I have a lot of friends who live here in the city, right? And like everything, like on Facebook, like everything that I would see on Facebook or Instagram would be pictures of my friends' protests or saying stuff about the things that were happening with with the shootings and police brutality and stuff like that. And so yeah, it was very tense. I know like a lot of my friends were kind of like saying that they wanted to leave New York City just because of all the craziness going around. And yeah, and so now the election is coming up, and I mean, Trump has obviously been like a super divisive figure, and so the idea of him being president another 4 years is obviously kind of like terrifying for 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 a lot of people, and so
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know. So yeah, there's just kind of like a lot of divisiveness right now.
Good thing you touched that topic, because it's a question you're gonna be the first one to answer, and it's actually your aunt. I'm interested in their opinion of the job that Trump is doing affecting our democracy and our lives. What do you think about that, Omar? About what your aunt is she's interested in your opinion about that?
Yeah. So okay, so I'm not a politician, and I'm not like an expert.
Yeah, we know that. You said that.
Personally, I think Trump is a joke. I mean, okay, so I guess maybe I shouldn't say that because
because they're gonna ban my channel.
Because
you should say it without any fear, man.
Yeah, dude, you gotta. Yeah.
Speak your mind, kid. Speak your mind.
No, yeah. So I do think that he's a joke in terms of like president, but I mean he's not a joke in the sense that like he might have like a lasting effect on U.S. democracy because I mean he's just kind of like he's done a lot of things, right? And who knows how many years it's gonna take the U.S. to reverse a lot of the damage that he's created, right? And so that's why right now the idea of, that he might be president another 4 years, or like a lot of people are kind of like wondering what is he going to do if he loses the election, right? Like, is he actually going to cede the presidency like peacefully? I've been seeing some headlines that Trump hasn't really agreed to cede the presidency peacefully if he loses, right? Like, because he's questioning basically the democracy here in the U.S. and voting and the voting system and infrastructure and voting fraud and stuff like that. And so yeah, there's just kind of like a lot of like everything, the pandemic, the things happening with the police brutality and Black Lives Matter, and then the election. I mean, it's just like a recipe for an intense. I don't know how to say it.
The recipe for disaster. That's what
yeah, the recipe for disaster. And, like everyone's on boiling point, anxiety and just worried.
And also, don't get it twisted. Like, a lot of people like to portray New York City as this, liberal utopia, but there is some very, very deeply rooted racism in New York City across the board. So not just like little pockets here and there, like any borough, they can tell you, especially once you get outside of New York City and get to New York State proper. Like, New York State at one point had the highest concentration of white supremacist shells in the entire country. And people are like, what? New York? I'm like, yep. It's good. Just keep driving. Get a half hour north, an hour north of Yonkers. You start seeing Confederate flags. All the radio stations turn to country music stations. Like, Confederate flags in New York State. Like, I can't make it up, man. So, like, really, even when I used to live in Queens, I would see white supremacist stuff and I would see racist stuff happen pretty regularly. There's a lot of people there that are very unhappy with the current situation. A lot of people who are very happy with the current situation and want it to continue. So a lot of those tensions are real, and it's really a matter of where people are fighting from, because some people have a much stronger foundation than others. I mean, really, like, Trump is one of the worst things and one of the best things that could have happened to this country, because the one thing that I will give him credit for, not personally, because I don't think that man deserves any credit for anything in his entire life, but my hatred of that man is beyond limits. Norma has heard me go off numerous times about the unending vitriol that I hold for that human being. Like, when he dies, I'm throwing a party and we're gonna get fucked up for like 48 hours straight. That's not the point. Point is,
a mess after.
right? So the one thing that I will say, like, the one thing that I can take from that is that he cut a lot of the bullshit out. Because there are a lot of people, especially people who are politically to the left, that have been saying for a long time that American politics is a joke, that the two-party system is a joke, that a lot of these people don't care, that a lot of these things are just about maintaining the status quo and systems of power as they stand. Now, Trump, as a racist, as a historical white supremacist, as an idiot, as a failed businessman, has stepped into the presidency and laid all of these things bare. So now what you have is this consolidation of power coming from a political party that has wholesale embraced white nationalism to the extent that there are outspoken white nationalists in jobs in the White House. Kushner is a renowned, notorious racist and white supremacist. Even when he was in high school, when he was in college, the friends that knew him were like, yeah, that dude was a racist when he was 16. So, like, the one thing that he has done is he's laid that all bare because of the backroom deals, because of the blatant hypocrisy, the unending and completely out in the open corruption that he's embraced and continued to perform. Most recently, he straight up, like, he told people that he's gonna send them a $200 check towards paying for their prescriptions, and he's doing it to obtain their vote. So, like, here's somebody in the highest office of the nation openly broadcasting his plan to bribe people to vote for him. Like, you can't make that up. If I put that in a book, people will be like, nah, man, come on, there's no way. Like, but here it is. Now, the thing is, deals like that happen all the time. All that kind of stuff happens in the back rooms, and they don't like to talk about it. But again, Trump is an idiot. He has no ability to produce subtext. Everything he does is off the cuff and out in the open because he's an idiot. He can't hide anything. So when he lies blatantly and brazenly. When he does these things and when he broadcasts his corruption, he does it out in the open because he's an idiot. He can't hide it.
Yeah.
So, like, but the thing is, politicians before him were doing the same shit. They were just smart. So they were able to hide it, and they were able, so it made it seem like everything was on the up and up. Because you notice the people that are rallying behind him are still in those positions of power. It's why McConnell has allowed him to continue to do those things. It's why the Senate has allowed him to put judges in lifetime appointments, because it's about the consolidation of power. It's about them getting all this stuff together and holding on to it. Mm-hmm. It's something, I mean, it gets kind of getting off into a tangent, but it's one thing that Republicans in the United States have always been good at. They've been good at playing politics for the sake of maintaining power and getting more of it. Democrats have been unilaterally limp-wristed and anemic in their ability to actually procure and obtain power in government. What Republicans do is, I don't care. They straight up say, I don't care about this. I don't care about the rules. I don't care about the quorum. I don't care about honor or decency. It's all about what I can get for me and what we can get for our people. So all the lobbyists, all the corporations that have skin in the game, all these people who are looking towards these politicians and these people in the positions of power to continue and maintain that status quo, they're going to keep doing the same shit. So like a lot of the stuff that Trump is doing is laying all this stuff bare. It's putting it out in the open. The United States has had a racism problem since its very inception. It has never gone away. It has never gotten better. It's only shifted. With Trump, you have all that stuff put out in the open explicitly. So now you have to deal with it. Now we're going to talk about police brutality because we've been trying to talk about it for years. Black Lives Matter started under the Obama administration. A lot of people don't realize that. They think it's new. BLM's been around for a long time, relatively. The concentration camps where they found out that they're illegally giving women or forcing women to have hysterectomies were built and maintained under the Obama administration. Like, this stuff isn't new. This stuff isn't all Trump's fault. Is he making it worse? Absolutely. But all he's doing is tying into the larger story that this country's been telling for decades. You know, oh my God, they're forcefully castrating women in these camps. It's so terrible. Yeah, and the United States was also chemically castrating Puerto Rican women on the island in the 50s and 60s. It was also chemically castrating natives back in the day and was castrating black women back in the day. This is all a continuation of the same goddamn story that's been going on in this country. So with Trump, yes, he's making it worse, and he needs to be held to task and held accountable for that. But you can't blame that man for these problems that are endemic to this country and these issues that have been long-standing and have been ignored wholesale practically by people on the right and the left because they're more invested in the status quo and maintaining their power than actually making things better.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you just mentioned something really that these people that were in power before Trump were actually politicians. This guy's just a business guy, right? He's just
a failed businessman.
Exactly.
Bankrupted 6 businesses.
Like I said, I'm from New York. That guy's from New York. We can both tell you exactly how much of a fuck up that dude has been historically. Anybody from New York City will tell you easily that Trump has been a chump forever in fucking perpetua, right? So like that's not even news. I'm gonna run the government like a business. Oh, the same way that you ran 16 different businesses into the ground because all you do is raise capital and then allow it to fail and then claim bankruptcy to get your seed money back and then move on to the next thing. Like I've seen the producers, dude. I know how this goes. And the fact that people don't like see it, fucking Trump Steaks, Trump University, the goddamn Apprentice, like everything this man touches turns to shit. And the only time that it doesn't turn to shit is when he turns to like illegal labor and illegal means to procure it. You know, nobody wants to talk about the fact that Trump Tower in New York City was built overwhelmingly using underpaid minority labor. So here's a guy talking about Mexicans and bad-mouthing people from south of the border. You built your motherfucking skyscraper in New York City with the same dudes. So like, how are you talking shit about brown dudes when you're looking to them to fucking build your shit?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
But I mean that kind of blatant hypocrisy is testament to the way that man lives his life. But the thing is that hypocrisy is not, he doesn't own that. That's not his. That hypocrisy has been around forever.
Yeah,
and
totally.
if people aren't going to pay attention to it, then it's like, okay, well, maybe now finally you're going to fucking listen. It took this idiot getting into office and completely thrashing our democracy beyond any kind of reasonable repair for you to start caring. But at least now you care. Welcome to the club. Like,
yeah, like timing, right? About what Mirna is interested. Norma, what would you have to say about what Trump has been doing affecting democracy and U.S. lives?
Oh no, yeah, he's garbage. He been garbage. Like honestly, he's just continuing the corruption, the racism, and everything. Like Dan said, like he just brought it out into the light. He cut the bullshit. It's like it's almost like we just ripped the mask of the hypocrisy off of this country. Because let's be very clear, this entire, like, the whole country was founded via genocide of, like, the indigenous people and slavery. And then and then from the East Coast, it just started, like, taking over and invading what was technically Hispanic and Mexican land, until Mexico was like, okay, we're gonna give you this land, stop killing us. And then now it's like blaming us for nonsense, even though we were already here. So, like, it's just continuing the trend. Like every single U.S. president so far since Washington has had like some sort of dirt in regards to racism and hypocrisy and bribery. Like, let's be honest. So for me, it's like what's going on right now is just basically the United States having to face the reality of the situation, is that this country is racist and does not want people like us who are brown and or black or Asian or whatnot to even, like, it doesn't matter whether we live or we die. It doesn't care about us. It cares about white people maintaining white supremacy and maintaining systematic racism in order to keep power. That's it. That's all.
So shit ain't no. It ain't no.
I'm gonna pass in a comment. Kevin was trying to connect right now, but he's having trouble with his cell phone. But he sent this message. I honestly can't even discuss politics with anyone because everyone refuses to acknowledge that truth. America was created out of power struggle, and American government has always been a power struggle, no matter how hip hop that goofy Hamilton made it. But yeah, he's having technical difficulties with the phone, and I think he's gonna join us on YouTube, and he's gonna try and put the comments on there. But about what you're let's say hi to your mom again, Eric. But about what she was asking, what opinion do you have on how Trump has been doing these past years in power?
Man, there's so much to say, right? But I mean, going back to the 2016 election, if you remember, many people, it was between Hillary and Trump, and what many people said was, I can't stand either of them, but I can't stand Hillary less. So if I have to choose, I'm going to choose Trump. So they chose him in part because not many people were too excited about Hillary, including many people on the left. You know, I was one of them. And then you look at, something that hasn't been mentioned is his love for dictatorships. You know, he's very close to Putin. He's the Saudi Arabian leader when he killed when he ordered the journalist killing. Like any other president, along with the West, the rest of the West would have been like, this is horrific. How could you do this? But he kind of protected him, and many people argue that the Saudi prince got away with it because Trump protected him and let him get away with it.
Absolutely.
And then, as Dan was saying, he really puts especially Mexicans in such a bad light. Yet he uses them for his labor. So there's a huge hypocrisy there. I mean, and I could go on and on. The thing that gets to me is I think his support is somewhere in the low 40s, maybe 43%, and it just hasn't moved. So I guess my bigger question is that base that just, regardless of all the lies, all the hypocrisy, all the stuff that he does to hurt our democracy, it's just funny. I just can't understand how that segment that supports him just is staunch. I mean, I guess my bigger question would be, what does that say about 40-something% of likely voters that just won't move in their support for him, irregardless of all the nonsense he's done? I mean, that to me, that's just profound. Just
that's crazy.
It's like how do you discredit people of color consistently trying to tell other people that this country has an issue with racism when there is a statistical, like 40 some odd % of people who are fully and wholeheartedly committed to that level of racism and don't see a problem with that racism in government? Like, how do you not put two and two together? If it's obvious that these people will support him no matter what he does, no matter what he says, they don't care. And and it's less that it's not even just that they don't care. They want that. They want somebody in government that's going to say, these people that you don't like, fuck it, we're going to kill them. They want somebody in government that says, oh, that kid that traveled illegally across borders and murdered 2 people, we should have more people like him. We should do more of that. They want somebody in government that says, oh, yeah, there was a protester who got shot with a less lethal munition, and that was fantastic, which is what he actually said. He said it was great. It was great to see.
Or journalists getting shot, yeah.
You know, they want that because in their heads, they see this as an opportunity for them to maintain, to fully grasp the power that has been robbed from them for so long. When you have a portion of the country that has been sheltered from the reality of their Caucasian mediocrity and has been told again and again and again that the problem isn't the fact that you have no goals and no standards. The problem is those brown people over there. They're going to latch on to that. And the thing is, people who believe in this and hold on to this like this. They enjoy this.
Yeah.
They want that as part of their life. You don't run around in a fucking red hat that was made in China, by the way. You don't run around in a red hat waving around flags and berating and threatening other people who are just trying to fight for the rights of everyone else. If you don't want that, that's a personal decision. That's a commitment. That is a defining moment in that person's life. They're saying, I'm defining myself by my allegiance to this spray-tanned narcissist. And nothing is going to shake me from that because he says the things that I want to be able to say in public. He says the things and he does the things that I wish I could do. But the thing is, when you have a society that's trying to progress and trying to be egalitarian and trying to be the best that it can be for everyone, people who are seeing their privilege shaken get scared because they've lived in a way where their privilege has been insular. And it has allowed them to live in a certain way and allowed them to kind of keep their less savory opinions, to the side. And a lot of people are mad about that. I can't really say, I can't say the things I really want to say about black people because then all of a sudden everyone's going to get mad at me. Like, no, you idiot. They're going to get mad at you because you're being a fucking racist. Like, but people don't think about it that way. I mean, this is even getting into the whole thing that people don't understand what racism is. And they think that racism just means that you wear a fucking hood and you go burn crosses. They don't understand racism as microaggressions. They don't understand racism as perpetrating stereotypes. They don't understand racism in a structural sense and how racism is to be seen in various, if not all, industries across the board in this country. They have such a narrow understanding of this because the education system in this country is geared towards that kind of ignorance. The education system of this country is built in such a way that if you're white, you don't learn about the dangers of whiteness. You don't learn about what that meant for millions of people over the course of this country's history. Because again, like, whiteness isn't a thing. Whiteness is a construct. We talk about blackness as a matter of reality because of the transatlantic slave trade. And we need a way to talk about that diaspora as they exist in these pockets of humanity that have been stolen from their homeland and forced to live elsewhere. Whiteness only exists as a construct because whiteness is a unifying factor that white supremacy utilizes to continually prey on black people and people of color and natives and the rest. So if you're part of that group and you've been spoon-fed that lie your entire life, and you've been told your entire life that America is great, that it's the greatest, and we've never done anything wrong, and that the slaves actually were happy, and that the natives gave up their land peacefully, and you've been taught all of these lies, and that's what you believe in. And the friends that you keep and the relationships that you have don't force you to question those things, and they don't force you to look elsewhere. You know, I forget what the statistic is about. Like the average person in this country only ends up traveling X number of miles from like their hometown. Like you have these people that says in Trump and in the context of that presidency and that movement, they see this reunification of whiteness. They see this doubling down of whiteness as an imperative, whiteness as something to be pursued and lauded. And that's only arising because of the increased outspokenness of the Black community, of communities of color, who are looking at this degradation of American politics as the time for them to put their foot down. You know, police brutality isn't new. Police brutality has existed as long as the police have, because they go hand in hand. What we're seeing now is the fact that you can't hide it anymore. The average person walking around in the street has a fully functional video camera in their pocket that takes video and audio. You can't hide this anymore. Black people have been talking about how cops do them dirty for decades. And I remember in the 90s, in the early 2000s, everybody used to, oh, well, Black people play the race card, and they love playing the race card. And as if that's a thing. You know, as a child growing up in a conservative household, I heard that terminology and I believed it. And then I got older and I started reading more and I started experiencing life more and I started reaching outside of that comfort zone, doing that legwork to understand the world and around me and the country around me and the people around me, instead of just watching Fox News all day and surrounding myself with people who just look like me. Those things, you have to take all that stuff into context. And again, Black people in the 90s were like, yo, the cops are fucking dirty. Everybody's like, okay, fine. But now we get to 2010, 2015, 2020. I know everybody's got a fucking camera and they're like, look, now you can't ignore it anymore. In response to that, we get the All Lives Matter movement as an example, which has been wholly and almost exclusively put forward by white people, because their response to Black people trying to champion their own humanity is to downplay that struggle and pretend that racism does not exist. That viewpoint only works for white supremacy and white communities. That argument is self-serving. So, like, it's... if nothing else, what we're seeing is a consistent community of committed racists. Because really, at this point, if you continue to support Trump, I'm calling you a racist to your face. Like I might have given you the benefit of the doubt in 2016. I might have still been, had a little wiggle room. Couple years later, at this point, I can't believe you're that stupid. You know exactly what the hell you're getting into when you're committing to it and you're doubling down on it. Anybody with half a brain, even if you have lifelong Republicans that are like, nah, I can't fuck with this dude anymore. Like the people that don't do that don't separate it, because I'm saying I'm still of the opinion like, fuck you, you're a Republican. Like I still think you're a piece of shit. But at least you're a piece of shit that's going that way. You're not linking up with this dude. Yeah. But like, if you're not even going to take that step and separate yourself from this fucking dumpster fire, like, you can suck my dick from the back, man. Like, I ain't fucking with that anymore.
No, yeah, and you mentioned something really it popped in my mind, because there's this new whitexicans. There's this new term over here on our side of these that were getting, we say, like a piece of the bone when this old regiment was in power. These whitexicans, we call them now, and we're also noticing that here in Mexico we have a big problem of racism and class. We say clasismo or class. class, like as in middle class.
Yep, classism is absolutely
It's a big problem over here in racism. It's like what Mexicans there's racism in between us, and there's this new term about whitexicans that were in some kind of privilege, or they were getting some piece of the pie when all of these corrupt governments were there, so they were okay with it. They knew of all of this crap that was going on, but they were like, hey, as long as we get something out of it, let's just keep going, right? But now that there's this change, they're like, hey, wait, where's my piece of the pie? And there's like, nope, no more pie, dude. We're gonna go with the low class. We're gonna go with the lower class, and we're gonna help them out. We're gonna give them scholarships to these kids that are they have no income. They've been like segregated. So no, we're gonna concentrate from the bottom and then go up. So all of
actually helping the people that need help the most. Go figure. What a novel concept.
And there's this group of people that are no, he's a dictator. He's doing like, wait a second, guys. We've been like under this regimen for 40 years that sold our country and all our resources, and that we're still in debt for a lot of crap that these fucking presidents did. And I'm not like, I'm a super supporter of this guy. No, he's been doing some things wrong, and I'm like, hey, dude, I'm for a change. And if he's doing this, like helping these kids and all these poor family indigenous cultures, and he's like, I don't give a crap about these companies. I'm going to concentrate on these guys from the bottom. But there's this classism and racism that has been going up. And I want to point out and remind everyone that Omar is on the East Coast. So I know that he probably has to get some shut-eye in a couple of hours. But I'm going to start with you, Omar, since your aunt has another question. In your opinion, of if you guys had Trump for another 4 years, what would that do to your country? What would that be your opinion?
Oh man, who knows? I mean, just more damage. I mean, it's like honestly, it's hard to imagine 4 more years of Trump. Because I mean, if it's just gonna be kind of like accumulated, right? Kind of like what he's done so far, and I don't know. Like I think after and he's just gonna be emboldened. I think if he gets he's gonna be emboldened, and so I don't know. He's gonna be even more, more crazy, more doomy. So I mean, like honestly, I have no clue. But I mean, maybe irreversible damage.
Let's put it on this side. I'm looking at the chat. They're in Spanish, but they're talking about how the situation is super tough for you guys between these two options that you are getting handed. I was talking to Kevin the other day when we met him, and I hope we can have him in the future, probably in some other episode. But we were talking about like, hey, we talked a lot about Bernie, right? Bernie Sanders, and how they made it impossible for him to be one of the candidates, when I see a lot of similarities between him and our president over here on this side. But I mean, there's got to be some other politicians that you can try and pick from the bunch, right? From all of these parties. But these two options that you guys have, they're commenting a lot in the chat. And there's one of my ex-students. ¿Qué onda, Carlos? ¿Qué andas haciendo aquí? Vete a dormir. Go to sleep, boy. No, I'm just kidding. But they're commenting this a lot about, there's another ex-student, go to sleep, kids. But these options you guys have, Omar, do you feel that they're similar to a previous elections, or do you think this is the craziest one?
I mean, so I don't think like anyone compares to Trump. I mean, in terms of like our options, I think they're limited. It's a two-party system. But I mean, so I think anything is better than Trump. Because I mean, that guy is crazy. So, and he's an idiot.
Wait. There's nothing better than Trump, so the other option is worse?
So there's nothing worse than Trump. That's what I meant.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I just wanted to make
Nothing
sure.
worse than Trump. So yeah. So I mean, so that's my thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I know you're on that side, so whenever you say, you know what, guys, I gotta go take a nap or go to bed, just tell me, okay? Everyone knows that it's so.
So I want to hear the other people's answers.
Okay. Just give me the sign, and we'll just say
Okay.
goodbye. But yeah, let's go with you, Norma, cousin. What's your opinion? What would happen if we would have this? We call him some guys over here on this side, they call him el orangutan naranja, or the orange orangutan. What do you think would happen, or what do you see if would come?
So if he were to, let's say, win the presidency for another 4 years, it's not going to be another 4 years. He's going to try and get that spot to be permanent. Like we're talking about, like similar to what Putin is doing over in Russia, where he's like the permanent president. How nobody, for some reason, can seem to like vote for like another one. For some reason, he always wins. That's what I'm thinking he's gonna do. He's gonna try and force his position in office to be permanent. He's gonna do a lot more damage in regards to letting white nationalists and white supremacy like run rampant in this country, and especially to get his friends and his buddies positions of power. Like I'm pretty sure that then at that point he's gonna try and or he actually may successfully get rid of like any and all brown people, especially those who are, let's say, like what they call anchor babies, like me, who was born here, and have automatic citizenship from being born here, and my parents were immigrants at the time. Like, I'm pretty sure that he's going to try and revoke my citizenship and have folks like me deported into a country that we have like no idea like how to really live there, what's expected of us, and then third generations who only speak English, like they're going to screw us over too, like screw them over too. So for me, it's just going to be like this continuous rise of racism, white nationalism, systematic racism as well, like because we see it in the school systems, and things are just going to get worse from here. And he's going to turn this into a dictatorship. He's going to let cops have can do. He's going to basically have cops and special ops agents and stuff disappear people who don't agree with him. It's essentially going to be similar to Stalin back in the era of Soviet Russia. That's what I'm foreseeing if he wins the election.
Yeah, like kind of like a dictatorship, no? Like, okay, no one else, it's gonna be me. And here's comment from our cousin Norma: more killings, more racism. Only thing he does is giving all the racist people the green light to be racists. Someone has to take him down, like JFK. It is what it is.
Yeah, I would actually be very careful about making those statements. That's actually that's a literal crime. So maybe don't repeat that on air.
Yeah, good thing he's
in Mexico, right?
On our side. Yeah, but no.
Whether or not I agree with it is redacted.
Yeah, those kind of I actually saw the other day the FBI went to someone's house because she was just making these comments on social network. It's like, whoa, dude,
it's
damn.
on the books. That is a literal federal offense. You cannot threaten the president of the United States with any kind of physical bodily harm. You can't threaten to murder that person. Even if you do it in jest, you will get feds knocking on your door.
Yeah, good thing he's on this side, but
right.
I try to be careful with those. But yeah, it's open for everyone. But yeah, I actually heard this from a friend that also is on that side. That, you know what, either one who wins, I see that as a possibility. I'm not gonna say it again, but yeah, he says like it's to this point that either one, there's going to be this threat. There's going to be this no. If they win, we're not going to settle for that. I think it's been publicly said by Democrats that if he takes it, we're not going to just let it go by. But about this, what your mom was stating, Eric, what do you see in a possible 4 years, 4 more years?
It sounds like a complete nightmare scenario for me. It's something that I kind of prefer not to even think about. But with all the voter suppression he's doing, his attacks on the mailing system here, USPS. I don't know if you've heard, Monk, but he hired someone to be in charge of all the mail over here, and he ordered him. I think he ordered him to get rid of like these machines that help with the mail, that help
sorting machines.
Mail out. Sorting machines. Thank you. He disassembled them, sold their parts. He wants it to be like a clusterfuck, pretty much. He wants it to be as hard as possible, because to him, mailing, voting by mail to him is completely corrupt. And I think he said at one point in the past that if more people could vote, Republicans would never win another election, something to that extent.
Which is true. The Republicans they continuously rig elections because the only way they can win is when they do it illegally.
Yes. And then, as you know, they've even, if you look at last election, I mean, Hillary won by over 3 million in terms of popular vote, but since we have this electoral system that's very antiquated, for the older times, because of how the country was, it was very different back then. It's just ridiculous that someone that loses by over 3 million of the popular vote still wins somehow and represents anyone. I think he would probably look to get rid of a lot of like social safety nets for people that are more low income, especially stuff like Obamacare. Like I currently have Medi-Cal because I don't have a job, and it's the only way I can have insurance. And he wants to defund that and take it away to the point where you either have insurance through your parents up to a certain age, I believe 26, or you have Medicare once you retire. And so it leaves everyone kind of in the middle, having to work a full-time job, because that's the only other way you can get a insurance, and that's if your job offers it, Otherwise, you have to pay like these crazy amounts. So it'll leave a lot of people without medical insurance, I believe. He'll probably want to get rid of unions or get as close to it as possible. And he'll definitely keep on emboldening racists, like how he through what he says, you see a lot of these racist attacks, like black women jogging and a white woman will come out of the bushes and throw a bottle at her or something. There's crazy stuff like that. And it's just emboldened the worst out of people. And I think I read somewhere recently too, that he wants to change the way U.S. history is taught so that it teaches a different perspective on the importance of how white people have contributed that hasn't been acknowledged yet, and the focus on the importance of how white people have.
He's also making it illegal for federal officers and people who work federal positions to educate, to do like racism education on the job. That it was anti-American or something along those lines. Yeah, so he recently tried it. He's trying to get an executive order passed where if you work for a federal job and you try to do like racism education, like you're gonna get fired.
What the hell?
And then he's also talking about, man here is talking about that's the 1776 initiative or the 1776 something, but basically, this idea that like if we teach about racism, that's bad, and people need to be educated about how great this country is. I mean, like, I fully believe that man is like a literal Nazi because his daddy was, or his granddaddy was, but like this is like straight up fascist stuff. Like no exaggeration, no stretching. This is like 1-to-1 re-education, trying to pursue an extreme nationalism over social justice. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to cut you off. I want to make sure you finish.
No, I think that was the last of my points. But I can only hope that even through all the means he's tried, through voter suppression, through gerrymandering, which is a big thing for his Republican Party, since most people don't vote for them. The only way they can win is by gerrymandering, which they draw districts a certain way so that they can make sure that they divide all the left-leaning voters to these, they divide them up. So it's really hard for them to elect the people that they want. And it's just conniving, evil planning pretty much to stay in power. So, and I think all that will be emboldened if he somehow gets another 4 years. And not, if that should happen, I can only hope that the Senate and the House turn Democrat, because that'll be the only way. I mean, but I mean, the way the polls have been showing recently, Biden does have a good lead on him. Even though I'm not like I was more of a Bernie Sanders guy myself, but I can just hope that that the mail-in balloting will be effective, and he's already said that he's going to contest. If it doesn't go his way, if Biden wins, that he's gonna contest it, that he's not gonna leave office potentially, and his main thing now is stacking the Supreme Court with since a recent Supreme Court justice passed away. Conservatives already had an advantage there, and now they're trying to rush in another Supreme Court justice. And his thought is, if he should lose the election, he's going to claim fraud, and he's going to take it all the way up to the Supreme Court, where they've already packed them with conservatives, where they have a substantial lead, and he's hoping that they'll allow him to somehow stay in office or something of the like, and that just scares me a lot. So it's really
that's creepy in a way. Here's another comment from my cousin. Here in San Diego, he feels that there's never been racism. Probably never ever. But yeah, probably in some zones, but yeah, you actually feel a vibe against the cops nowadays. He says you prefer not to even get close to them, avoid them, which back in the day here in SD, that never existed. Probably
I guarantee you that statement is completely false if you ask a black person, but that's besides the point.
San Diego is a conservative city.
I worked in San Diego back in the 80s. It was everywhere. That's what she told me. She worked in white neighborhoods, cleaning houses. She was Maria.
Here's a comment of one of my ex-students. He's in Spanish. I don't know, Dan, if we have a problem, but sinceramente, profe, as in me, as in his teacher, mi padrastro es americano y se siente muy mal de que Trump es presidente y que tal vez lo sea de nuevo y está avergonzado de lo que dice de México, de cómo los insulta. But I think he's saying he's going to leave because he has class tomorrow. But thanks for the comment, Jared. It's interesting to hear about your foster dad or your dad about this point of view he has, and I bet a lot of Mexicans on that side are kind of like a little ashamed of how he kind of sometimes talks about us and the wall and everything and all of these things. But you wanted to point something in, Dan, and I'm going to take my bathroom break, so go ahead, guys. So I'm going to disappear for a bit, so you take the mic. Perdón, Omar. Go ahead, Omar.
Yeah, so I'm going to take off now.
Okay, yeah, it's ¿qué hora son allá? Son, what is it, like 11, 12?
It's 12:30.
Dude, go rest, dude. Go rest, and give us a last statement. Like, what did you think about the chat? And give us a last message, like a goodbye message.
Goodbye message. So I enjoyed the chat. Thanks for having me here. It was nice talking and hearing everyone. Talking with everyone and hearing everything that everyone has to say. So best of luck. Take it easy, and hopefully I'll be back sometime again for a different.
Yeah, for sure. We're gonna have a bike episode, and we're gonna have a physical fitness episode. So you're gonna be on both of them. So hopefully you'll join us. But thanks a lot, Omar. Have a good night, and go rest, man. Thank you very much for your insight. Have a good night. Yeah. But go ahead, guys. I'm going to disappear for a bit, but go ahead. You take the mic, Dan.
All right, cool. So, like, realistically, if we're talking about this whole idea of what's going to happen if Trump wins the presidency over the next 4 years, like, in terms of really hard, like, this is stuff that will happen. Hate crimes will continue to increase. That is unquestionable. Yeah. White nationalists have been continually emboldened by this man. They have been told implicitly and explicitly that their actions are pardonable and that they should continue. The fact that they continue to speak favorably of Kyle Rittenhouse, who straight up murdered 2 people, you can tell they want basically what he's doing now. Is it used to be dog whistles. Now it's just straight up with a megahorn or a bullhorn. The idea that, no, we want you to continue to do this. You should be assaulting and murdering protesters because that is the only way to achieve law and order in this country. This claim to be pro-law and order is really about establishing and maintaining control. That's what he wants. That's what his base wants. This is why they continue to do that. continued aggression and acts of aggression against minorities, against immigrants. If Trump is president again for the next 4 years, you will see a widespread, goodness is the word I'm looking for, mobilization of the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security. They've already shown themselves to be very gleefully part of Trump's goon squad. They have no problem and no qualms with showing up and committing acts of violence and what in other countries will be labeled war crimes against protesters, against the press. Recently, a reporter in Los Angeles was assaulted and violently arrested by police, and they lied about it. They tried to claim that she didn't have proper credentials and everything else, and they didn't realize that when they knocked her phone out of her hand that it was still recording and was recovered by another reporter, and they had all of it caught on camera. So what we're going to see, if Trump continues to be in power, we're going to see an emboldening of local police. We're going to see those same police being backed by an outwardly fascist and cowardly Department of Homeland Security. We're going to see continued aggression by ICE and them functioning as his boots on the ground genocide machine against communities of color, against immigrants. These are things that scare me. These are things that I really think should be fought against directly. I don't think voting is going to fix that. I think it's going to take something with a little more elbow grease, but not everybody's willing to go there. And I understand that, I can't expect everybody to be as militant as I am. I can't expect everybody to readily embrace that kind of violence, but I'm hoping that people will start getting there sooner. Right now, even most recently with the, with the protests that are happening due to the failure of the courts to indict the officers that murdered this woman.
Breonna Taylor case.
Yeah.
Breonna
So
Taylor
like,
case, yeah.
I think it's in Tennessee. The cops rolled out with shields, with built-in tasers. Like, you don't have money for schools. You don't have money for public services. You don't have money for education. You don't have money for transit, but you have money to build and deploy shield tasers for your police. Like, priorities. What are they? So if he continues to be the president for the next 4 years, we're going to see a ramping up of those things. The one thing that I don't think people are talking about is what happens if he loses and what happens after the next presidency. Because that's the thing that really, real talk, that's the thing that scares me. Because right now, Trump is Trump. Everybody knows what he's about, and his base embraces that. But conservatives have a hard time sugarcoating that because this guy has no filter. He has no ability to kind of hide his ulterior motives. If I were a Republican, which even saying that makes my stomach turn I can't
it's
God,
queasy.
but if I was and Biden wins the next election, which if by some miracle he does, because God, I hate that man. My sole purpose in the realm of politics would be to get a strong conservative that aligns with all of Trump's goals without the blatant racism and sexism and misogyny and all the other stuff. Like that candidate in 2024, because Republicans will find that candidate and will run him against Biden or her. If Republicans are smart, they'll find a woman to do it, which they might not do because Republicans are notoriously sexist. But basically, that kind of whitewashed version of Trump in 2024 will beat Biden by a landslide. That is, you will never convince me otherwise. They will find that candidate and he will demolish Biden. no contest. They're going to get somebody who's going to eat him alive in debate. They're going to get somebody who's going to run circles around him on policy, and they're going to maintain that same base that they had because they're going to find somebody who's just as strongly jingoistic as Trump is. And Democrats aren't going to be able to do a damn thing about it. They're not going to do a damn thing anyway because they don't want to do a damn thing about anything ever. But it's just going to be more of that. So that's a discussion that I feel that more people should be having, especially, leading up to and immediately following the election. Is how the hell, how do we quietly get Biden out of the White House and into an old folks home and get a competent person there? I mean, really, because this guy's like a fucking shibboleth. He's like a shambling fraction of a human, but anyway,
you know what's something that I've always been not a conspiracist, but I always try to see in politics a lot of angles. There's always an A, B, or C in my head. There's not just one thing. There's always something behind it. But what I've noticed when these Black Lives Matter protests starting were these pallets of bricks and all of these things set up for chaos. Now, what I thought was, okay, someone's funding this and someone wants to create this chaos, or someone wants to pour more gasoline on the fire instead of taking it out, right? So, and then these Antifa start coming out and okay, are these guys funded by one of these guys probably to create chaos and make Trump look bad? Like on our side, there's these guys inventing and causing these false news, but on your I see on your side these motivators. Here's a pile of bricks, go and break all these windows and go loot. What do you think about that, Norma? Do you think that this is being influenced by one of these parties, or is this organic, or is this coming from these groups of Antifa and all of these guys?
So it's definitely not coming from Antifa, because Antifa stands for anti-fascism. It would make no sense for them to want to cause chaos where Black Lives Matter would be set up to be blamed, for looting and for destruction of property and things like that. No, it was all set up by Trump's supporters or by police themselves. That's what I believe in, only because they will do everything to make Black Lives Matter and Antifa, aka anti-fascist, the anti-fascist group, look like the bad guy and to be painted like the bad guys. They're the ones causing all this mayhem while the police are so great at maintaining order and murdering Black people and stuff like that. So it's because the police, we protect and serve and all this mess. And when in reality, it's let's be honest, you guys are the biggest, most organized crime organization in the entire nation. Okay, you're not fooling anybody. Those bricks, that stuff that was set up for Black Lives Matter protesters to use, that was definitely set up either by police or by Trump supporters to try up protesters to be blamed and arrested on purpose, because they will do it.
100%. It's 100% a setup. 100%. Cops lie as part of the job description. You're not gonna tell me a cop ain't lying. That's madness. The one thing, everybody the notion of Antifa as a dirty word is something that's been perpetrated by white supremacists because it scares them and because it's easy to blame a boogeyman. The bottom line is Norma is right. Antifa is short for anti-fascist, and specifically anti-fascist action. When you see people dressed in all black with their faces covered, specifically you talked about those people as Black Bloc. Black Bloc in terms of anti-fascist action are people who are dedicated to being boots on the ground in response to fascism. So if you don't want Black Bloc marching, don't be a fucking fascist. Like, they're all reactionary. There are people that show up. Like, when all the shit went down in South Carolina, Black Bloc is what saved lives down there because they were willing to literally put their bodies on the line. You know, so we have to be careful about repeating those narratives because those narratives are created by certain people and they only serve specific interests. One of the things that we need to be careful of and be vigilant of is acting like all opinions have equal weight and seeking neutrality as the pinnacle, as the be all and end all. Because a lot of these lies get perpetrated by people who want a boogeyman. They want a scapegoat. So when you set up a pallet of bricks, because I mean, like, you really, I mean, not you, like specifically you, but like the general you, like, what kind of an idiot thinks that a pallet of bricks at a protest is anything but a plant by law enforcement? Like, what else could it possibly be? That is literally police going out of their way to try and instigate violence or giving undercover officers a means to instigate violence, thereby allowing police to completely brutalize protesters. Like, this is a one-to-one. Like, you're gonna have to work a lot harder than that to pull the wool over my eyes, fam. Like, I ain't a kid. You're not gonna trick me with that shit, you know? And it's like, now people are talking about, oh, there was a U-Haul that had signs and everything else in it. They were like, oh, someone must be funding these protesters because how else are they getting a U-Haul to transport all this? And it's like, you stupid motherfucker. Like, do you think, like how else do you think people bring their shit to movements? You think everybody has a car? You think, like, what's more cost effective? Also, I can rent the U-Haul for $20 and a credit card because I have an ID and I'm over 18. This is not some massively crowdsourced or illegally funded action. This is some super basic shit. But the reason that people talk about these things and the reason that these narratives continue to exist is because conservatives don't have any real values. So they believe, like, in their head, there's no way that somebody would go out and protest and do these things because they believe in it. There has to be some kind of ulterior motive. There has to be some kind of dark money involved. Also, keep in mind, as an aside, any mentioning of George Soros or George Soros's money is a straight up anti-Semitic dog whistle. And there's something that is straight up Nazi shit. So we're not even going to touch that. Like, there's this idea, like, if, like, Republicans can't think about, and conservatives in general, they can't think about fighting for a cause because they don't have a cause to fight for. Like, everything they do is reactionary and in the service of consolidating power and acting under white supremacy. So when they see people on the left doing these things and committing to these actions, it's projection. They must be getting money from someone else. There must be something else going on there because no person would ever do this because they believe in it. That's projection. You don't believe in anything and you don't have any fucking, like, moral backbone. So of course you can't understand why anybody else would do that. You would never do that yourself because there are no real conservative causes worth fighting for. Everything that they fight for is reactionary when people want to fight for freedoms and justice for everyone else. Like, you have to see that as a one-to-one. Those two things, like, they have to go together. That's how they exist. So, like, my thing is conspiracy, and conspiracy as a concept is a matter of control. It's the same reason that homeless people or people who are unhoused, that unhoused people historically have had a penchant for property damage. My father worked with that community in New York City for a very long time. So I have, a decent amount of history with that community. Like, I know, like, I have, I'm speaking from a somewhat educated position. The reason that happens is because those individuals and those communities regularly lack control over their lives and their circumstances. So trashing a public bathroom gives them a modicum of control. It gives them an opportunity to exert some control on the world around them. Conspiracy theory functions in the same way. People who lack information, who lack knowledge, who feel they feel that a situation is completely out of their control, look towards conspiracy theories and conspiracy in general as a means of exerting personal control over that circumstance. This allows me a deeper level of understanding because I really know what's going on here. It's not X, it's really Y. And they don't want you to know that. It's this need for control combined with this kind of renewed emphasis on Gnosticism, where I have the secret knowledge that other people don't know, and that makes me better than you. So, like, that needs to be seen for what it is. And ultimately, I think about, to paraphrase, one of the things, like, when I was a kid, I used to always watch Bill Nye, like Bill Nye the Science Guy. That was like every day I got home from school, I religiously. Yeah. And one of the things that always stuck with me was extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And I still believe that, and I hold on to it to this day. I will believe anything you tell me, granted you can back it up. You give me evidence, you give me sufficient information in a way to support it, sure. But, conservatives screeching about Antifa because it's convenient for them to blame other people when really it's just regular ass people. Like, again, like I always go back to what Norma said. Antifa is short for anti-fascism. If you don't like fascism and you're opposed to fascism, congratulations, you're Antifa. Like, that's literally what. So when people talk, I'm against Antifa, I'm like, well, say the whole thing. Say it with your chest. What are you against really? Because Antifa stands for anti-fascism. So if you're against anti-fascism, what are you for? Realistically, what do you support then? You got to add that shit up. And, any claims of violence by anti-fascists are overwhelmingly blown out of proportion and more often than not taken out of context. People, there's this video of a guy and his daughter getting assaulted by anti-fascists. And I'm like, really? That guy is an outspoken and well-known fucking Nazi. And his daughter is really his child, his female child is really like his fucking like girlfriend or some shit. She's actually like 20 something. And he purposely has her dress up and look like a child so that it looks like she's just a kid. Like, Antifa beat up an old white dude in this video of him bloodied on the floor. Yeah, and when you look at the whole video, that dude was assaulting motherfuckers and got his shit rocked for it. But if it's convenient for your narrative, you're going to cut out the first 10 seconds of that video and then present it, or the famous, fucking Antifa, they assaulted a bunch of guys with a hammer. And I'm like, you mean the hammer that the fucking bust-in fascists brought and were using to assault people that was then taken from them and used in self-defense against them? That hammer? But, Baba, I got, you don't know what I know, man. Like, I've stayed connected to this shit. If you're going to try to pull all this shit out on me, you better come with it and you better come correct. Because at the bottom line is I can go back and say that every single major domestic terrorist incident in this country over the past year has been perpetrated by white nationalists, and it's been a white person. It's inarguable. It's a fucking fact. So, you're trying to blame other people for this shit? Because I'm pretty sure the blame is supposed to go elsewhere. Like the one dude most recently, fucking protesters ganged up and they beat this guy and left him unconscious in the street. First of all, people were posting that video and saying they killed the guy, which isn't true. He just got his shit rocked. But you go back and you find the full video. That dude traveled down to where protests were happening on purpose with a modern interpretation of a fucking Roman gladius. Like, the dude had a fucking sword. So he's literally chasing protesters with a goddamn machete. And then he got jumped by protesters who were able to get after him en masse, and they kicked the shit out of him. Good. Like, if you're literally trying to murder protesters in the street, you fucking deserve whatever the hell you get. Kyle Rittenhouse should have had his fucking skull split. Like, unquestionably. The dude traveled from out of state with an assault weapon for the explicit purpose of harassing and assaulting protesters. He was caught on camera harassing and attempting to assault protesters before that shit went down. And when he finally had to deal with some shit because he's a punk-ass 17-year-old, he got scared and he pulled the fucking trigger. And when he ran, somebody tried to chase after him and stop him, and he turned around and he shot again. The person that he shot was shot in the back. You don't shoot somebody in the back in self-defense. That's not how that shit works. Again, but to some people, facts don't matter. They want to pursue narratives that fulfill their agenda instead of speaking truth to power. I don't do that shit. I call that shit like I see it. And I'm more invested in seeing the truth come out and be put out in the open, and having people be able to actually make up their fucking mind and understand how this shit is really going down, instead of having stuff being spoon-fed to them by people with an agenda.
Oh yeah, and we've seen those videos when on newscasts they're edited. They just show these 5 seconds of what's happening, but they don't show the previous 30 or the previous minute, what happened before, right? And
you get the one clip of all the protesters jumping on the police car. You don't get the 10 seconds before of that police car ramming through protesters.
Yeah, exactly. And
what we were talking about misinformation.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I mean, misinformation, because you don't do that. You don't edit stuff like that accidentally. That's done on purpose. Somebody made a conscious decision to cut that video short that way and present it accordingly.
Yeah, and that's when you think of, okay, if they did that, there's someone behind this that they're saying, you know what, edit it. They're throwing money into these say newscasts or whatever.
See, but the thing is, that starts getting into tangential stuff, because if you want to look at that, point for point, if you're broadcasting something on TV, you're doing it for ratings. What gets ratings? Sensationalism across the board. And if you're a news outlet and you know the kind of power that police hold, you're going to be a little bit careful about how you present this, because especially in those cities, like, you don't talk shit about the NYPD in New York, because the police unit in New York City, the NYPD fucking runs that shit. They're extremely powerful, and they're malicious, and they're ruthless in how they maintain that power. So if you're a local news outlet there, you're going to be very careful about that. There are media conglomerates and the people that are behind those scenes that it's not necessarily that they want certain narratives told. It's that they need to be very careful about how they present that, because of shareholders, because of the money that's involved. So because when you start going into that direction of like, oh, there has to be somebody like behind the strings manipulating everything, that starts feeding into like the fucking like Nazi rumor mill. And you got to be careful about that, because that gives it legitimacy, because those kinds of conversations inevitably veer towards, well, who owns them? Oh, then it's these people, then it's those people. And isn't it interesting how only these kinds of people own these industries? There must be some kind of cabal or some kind of secret thing going on behind the back. And before you know it, you're freaking parroting Nazi talking points 1-to-1. So like, it's a matter of, sometimes the man behind the curtain is really a man behind the curtain, and then sometimes it's just that you didn't know there was a DVD player in the back. So to everything a grain of salt, man, especially because there are people with a vested interest in having those narratives continued, especially when they're being continued by somebody who doesn't look like them. So all that stuff it's gotta be fucking analyzed with a fucking microscope, man, and it needs to be seen for what it is, because the people that want that stuff out in the open will let it rock, and they'll let it rock until somebody has a question about it, and then they swoop in to get that information.
Yeah, about what we were talking about, Eric. What do you think about all these? Well, we were talking about these pile of breaks and everything set up. What's your point of view of what happened around those times? The protests kind of went down, but there's still this tension, right? But what was your first point of view when we started seeing these stacks of bricks like set up there for them?
Oh, I didn't follow that too much, and I knew of Antifa, but I never really learned too much about them. I just heard that I would hear that term thrown out a lot, negative correlation, obviously, and anti-fascist, apparently. The point I wanted to get to was like when you would have the World Trade Organization meetings up in Seattle, and there would be like huge protests.
Mm-hmm.
When I first learned that law enforcement would hire people to start creating a ruckus, to start like damaging stuff so that it would give them the authority to corral everyone in and really like exercise their power, that was like mind-blowing for me. That they would use such corruptive tactics, in my opinion, in order to just really enforce their power to get what they want to get done. For me, that was just mind-blowing. I couldn't believe that they would go to those lengths. And then going back to like cops and Blue Lives Matter and all that. First of all, let me say that I, in general, do support cops. I think most cops are good people, but the bad apples tend to really stand out sometimes. They really stand out because they do really bad, egregious stuff. And I think one of the reasons that people kind of a lot of people have a negative kind of image of cops in general is because the cops themselves, even when one of the bad apples does something really bad, really egregious, they tend to just jump on their defense no matter what they do. And people from the outside
cop do that.
What's that?
Does a good cop do that?
Does a good cop do what?
Like you have really these people, these cops that are brutally like ridiculous and doing all this fucked up shit. Oh, but they're the bad cops. The good cops are really there. But you're saying that the cops jump to their defense. It's like they're really good cops.
I think they can be good, but there might be this like gang mentality established in there where we got to look after each other no matter what. But the thing is, from someone seeing that from the outside in, especially us citizens, and you just see them, and I don't know if all cops jump to their defense, but like the people on top usually no, they did everything under using protocol and all that. That's what I think really gets people really pissed off, and it becomes really tense. And I think something that should change in terms of cops is if someone does something really egregious, really bad, I think they should they should prosecute. They should be held to a higher standard, even amongst themselves. But I think there's this like gang mentality that's so established, like we got to look out for each other no matter what, and we're our own group. That's what I think causes the never-ending friction, mainly. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I was more thinking, that something has to change there structurally. Because I mean, would you say that there are no good cops then, since they always tend to look out after each other, even after someone from their force commits something that's obviously very wrong? Or I mean, there might be pressure too. There might be such a buddy system that's really like talking out against it. It might make you the black sheep. It might affect your job. So I think for me, that's something that has to be dealt with.
Don't say might. Use more concrete terms, because you bet your ass it does, and that's something that you can actually see. There was a group of police officers in the NYPD who went out of their way to expose a lot of that corruption, a lot of the serious stuff that was going out there. Their careers were ending, completely destroyed.
Yeah, the retaliation.
Like
here's a comment from Kevin. He says all the time they stand out all the time. Nothing against you. And there is about what we're talking about. I've worked among many cops. Kevin, he's still joining us. But go ahead, man. I just wanted to post these comments.
No, sure. Like my whole thing is like you can't have a good cop, because the job of being a police officer forces you to act within certain confines that any kind of morally upstanding person would not allow. You can have a good person who happens to be a police officer, but the job description and what that entails requires you to uphold systems of power that are counterintuitive to a just society.
Yeah.
So like when a police officer's job, because remember, a police officer's job first and foremost is protect property, not people. As a police officer, you do not have a legal obligation to protect another human life that has been established by the Supreme Court of the United States of America. To the extent that police officers have been like not held accountable when they failed to protect human lives during one of the not more recent, because there've been so freaking many, which is like that I even need to preface this sentence with that statement is abhorrent. But there was a police officer working in a school that during a school shooting he ran and hid because he was scared, which is like, good job doing your job, awesome, fantastic. And when they tried to hold him accountable, the court was like, no, he doesn't have an obligation to protect life. So that's established. That's court precedent now. So like,
Was that a
the
cop or
issue
a security guard at the school? Because I think
either way,
yeah.
but
But,
in either case, it's somebody who's chosen to align themselves with law enforcement.
yeah.
More to the point, like, when you think about how law enforcement functions and how it really works in society, you realize that there are a lot of things that can be handled by people who aren't cops, and a lot of things that can be handled by us as citizens. Like one of the things, because people go, oh, we need cops, we need police, and I always go, why? Give me a specific reason why you need police. And inevitably, it's always some kind of nonsensical, fear-mongering bullshit about safety and about laws and about rules. And it's not to say that if we suddenly got rid of police that everything would be fine. But nobody's asking for that. What we want, what a lot of people want, is to see the eventual abolition of the police force as it exists, and to have that system replaced by something that is more equitable, that is more humanitarian, that is more interested in making people's lives better than continually seeking punitive action against people. When your notion of justice is linked to punishment, you will seek punishment in lieu of justice. So, to that end, you can't have policing the same way it exists now or has existed, because all that is doing is pursuing punitive justice instead of restorative justice. Like, I'm not here for like the good cops who sit idly by when other police officers break the law, do horrible shit, and aren't held accountable. Like, there's, because it's not just like, oh, somebody fucked up. You got to think about it in terms of like the overall thing. Because you think about it, you don't do like fucked up shit if you think you can get away with it, like without having tested those waters prior. You don't pursue that kind of action unless you know, one, that you can get away with it, and two, you're going to be covered by the people around you. I think about this in terms of working in food service. Like, before COVID shut everything down, I was a chef. So if I wanted to do something dirty in the kitchen, right? Say, wanted, whatever, pick some food up off the floor and serve it to a guest. I wouldn't do that. One, if I wasn't sure I was going to get away with it. Two, if I wasn't sure that the other cooks working around me wouldn't say something. And three, I wouldn't do that if I wasn't sure that the other kitchen crew would be okay with it, because I wouldn't want to worry about creating that dynamic in the kitchen. So when a police officer does something like that, when a police officer does something obviously wrong, one, they're comfortable that they're going to get away with it because we've shown in this country that we refuse to hold police officers accountable. Two, they're doing it certain in the knowledge that no one around them will hold them accountable to a higher standard. And three, they're doing this with the knowledge that the community around them will not be impacted to the point of their discomfort as a result of their actions. You don't have those three things, that can't exist in a community filled with just and justice-minded people. That only happens in the throes of corruption. So for me, like, I'm not here to support the police. The police are there to do a job, and they do their job poorly. And those who don't do their job poorly are held to standards that allow other police officers to get away with stuff. So, like, I can't understand why any decent person would want to be involved in that. Like, the fact that you don't have police officers en masse speaking out against like blatant acts of police brutality and injustice is in and of itself an indictment of that entire system. People to want to talk about good cops all the time. So where the hell are all the cops that are putting their foot down when they catch a cop raping somebody, driving drunk, murdering somebody, planting evidence? Like, these things happen and we know that they happen. And everybody wants to talk about these good cops, apparently. And where the hell are they? Like, what are they doing? What the hell are they doing? Most recently, there was a police officer who was standing up and talking about how, you know, these protesters had a point and we need to address them. And his video went viral. And initially, his commanding officer was like, nah, that's cool. Like, this is a good thing. And then it started getting more views, and it started getting spread around more and more. And instead of, you know, a couple hundred views, now it was a few thousand, 10,000, 100,000. And he gets a call, I think either later that day or the next day, from his commanding officer that was like, yo, you need to take down the video. And he's like, but you said everything was fine. Like, I don't see what the problem is now. And his commanding officer told him that his boss had instructed him. And he's like, listen, you need to tell this dude that he needs to take this video down or else there's going to be consequences. And that man ended up losing his job as a police officer. So, like,
yeah, and as Eric said, no, yeah, they support each other at the point that, you know, I'll stay quiet, I'm not gonna say anything. So like this gang kind of sense, as you said, Eric, like, I'm gonna support my guy even though he did something wrong. I'm gonna stay quiet. That's my way of supporting my guy, right? He's on my side. But yeah,
do that.
exactly. That's when we gotta go to the human side. We gotta keep that away and go, okay, what's right and what's wrong. But unfortunately, as you said, on top of them, there's these guys that on top of these guys, there's this line, or there's this, like, you know what, dude, it's what I say. And eventually it's this chain of command, right, that they have to follow. But I have this comment from here, and it's a little bit more related to what the elections are, but it's a comment that coming from Eric's mom, and says that my recommendation to make sure that your vote does count is as soon as you get your mailing ballot, vote, and instead of placing it in the mailbox, get your family members and neighbors to take them to the office, to the registers of voters. That way you will be sure your vote counts. That's I guess that's a good way to make sure, or kind of like a instead of just sending it through the mail, that way you kind of make sure it's going to the right place, and that your vote is. You can't
always do that, but it's definitely a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. And here's a comment of Yuri. She had to leave for a bit, but she's back. She says, government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from earth. Let's remember that police officers are also human beings. Makes me think of the show Black Mirror. Yeah, there's this show that
it's at 100%. Fuck that shit. Like, unequivocally, I am 100% not here for that bullshit. You went in and you got that training. You decided to be a fucking cop, which means you deserve to be held to the highest standards possible for law enforcement. I'm not here. Oh, but they're people. But they're human. You don't understand. Like, motherfucker, that's their job. That's your job. Anybody else, if you don't do your fucking job, you get fired. Or worse, if I would decide to be a fucking chef and I go into a goddamn kitchen and I'm burning the food and fucking making somebody sick because I send out raw fucking chicken, you don't get to turn around and be like, oh, but you gotta feel bad for him because he's a human being. He has feelings too. Fuck that.
100% fuck that. I'm not here to humanize people who go out of their way to do fucked up shit and then aren't held accountable for it. You want to hear, like, if you want to humanize somebody, humanize the people that are routinely being abused by these people in the positions of power. Those are the people who deserve to be humanized. Those are the stories that should be told more often. Oh, this officer feared for their life. Well, guess what? You fucking signed up for that shit. And I don't feel sorry for you because you chose this. Nobody put a fucking gun to your head and was like, well, now you got to be a fucking cop and you got to fucking deal with it. You went out of your way. You signed up for that shit. You took the courses. You went to the academy. You went through the trainings because you said you wanted to be a fucking cop and you wanted to be in law enforcement. So guess what? Now you got to do your fucking job. It really is that simple. Like, the bottom line for me is that people want to tell me, oh, this police officer, one, policing is not an extremely dangerous job. That is a lie that is perpetrated by police and police unions. There are dozens of other jobs in this country that are more dangerous than being a cop. One of them is being a pizza delivery driver. But, nobody says, delivery boys' lives matter. It's just fucking police, and blue lives don't exist because a cop is a fucking job. You being a cop is not who you are as a person. Moreover, the fact that you conflate your job as a police officer with who you are as a person is what creates this problem in the first place. But nobody wants to talk about that. They just want people to feel bad about cops because they're saying, "Oh, our job is so hard. It's so dangerous, and nobody cares about us." Like, fucking.
I think what she kind of meant was that these guys, for example, the other day I was talking with a friend. He's a musician, but he's into martial arts. He's got a lot of experience in martial arts, and we were talking about jiu-jitsu, how jiu-jitsu we were talking about this also. I remember that. How about implementing a little bit of jiu-jitsu into police training? And he's like, no, dude, they don't need training. What we need is like a psychiatric investment into this training. These cops are going through a process that I wouldn't call it a training, because it's just probably super quick and it's just like, okay, we need cops. You know what? Yeah, here's a gun, go. But there's not this previous testing or like this background or this psychiatric evaluation or training that you should go through before there's a gun handed to you or before this responsibility is handed to you.
There's two things there. Like, one, the training that you need to be a police officer is abysmally small. You need less training to be a cop than you do to be a hairstylist. That's true across this entire fucking country. The other thing is that people lie. There are psychiatric batteries that you need to do in order to move forward in law enforcement. I took them. Like, I took all the fucking civil service tests in New York City. I did NYPD, PAPD, New York State Corrections. I did all that. They ask those questions. People tell you to lie because they know what answers you want. When I'm sitting in the room and before our interviews, everybody in the room is talking about how to lie and what answers you're supposed to give in order to beat the psych battery. Like, people don't. Oh, the problem is training. The kind of person that wants to be a police officer is either malicious or misguided, and I've seen no deviation from that between either of those two extremes. I have friends, personal friends,
He
who
was
work in law enforcement.
the NYPD, right? I think you were trying to join.
Yeah.
The context.
Yeah, like I took all those. Yeah, well, there's like, I got one friend who's a cop. He was in the NYPD. I took all the civil service exams. I ended up giving corrections. Like, I went to Albany, I went through all that thing, and I went to New York State Corrections and immediately decided that I had no business being there. It was completely antithetical to my morals and my politics, and I literally grabbed all my shit, handed all their shit back, and walked 8.5 miles to the nearest bus station and took a bus back to New York City. Like, was never more convinced of anything in my life. So like cops don't need, like, the notion, like, first of all, the average police officer is already doing some kind of martial arts or something else on the side because those people always run in the same circles. all the self-defense and everything else. And cops love to talk about that shit. They love to talk about and my dad worked for corrections. My dad worked with cops for 20-something years. He could tell you more of the same. So, like, the cops don't need more ways to be violent. What we need is a way for society to exist without cops.
That's what I wanted to ask you.
The job that they serve.
I wanted to ask you your opinion on that, because I know that, especially with all the recent incidents with police brutality that have happened, I was curious what you thought. There's been a big movement to defund the police and to create something else in its place. I haven't followed it too much, but I just wanted to know your thoughts on what could conceivably replace the police that would function, because there's still going to be crime no matter what. There's still going to be bad people out there. What kind of system can we implement that would defund the police and that would help replace it, where there could also be some sense of safety, but there wouldn't be that danger of too much power within a group where they can start doing their misdeeds and be protected by themselves? And as you say, a lot of people that join are either misguided or liars. What can replace it so that there can still be some sense of safety for the crime that will always happen, amongst humans? Do you have? I'm just curious about that, because I haven't followed that too much.
So the thing is that in order to tackle that, you have to go in a couple different directions. So bear with me for a little bit, because we're gonna have to move around a little bit. The statement that I said before was that most people that join the police force are either misinformed or malicious. So that's one of those things. Like, a lot of people who want to become cops or people who want to exert that kind of power over other people. We've seen that anecdotally, and we've seen that in practice routinely as a result of the evidence that we have by police brutality. So the eventual goal is, well, and I can't speak for everyone, but myself as a democratic socialist on a good day and a social anarchist on a bad day, the ultimate goal is police abolition. We don't need cops. We keep ourselves safe, overwhelmingly. What that means is that policing as it exists currently needs to be eventually eliminated. What that elimination entails is a multi-step process to creating proper social networks and creating social safety nets and services to fulfill those needs. We're already seeing now certain cities that are massively decreasing their police force and instead embracing social workers and sending out not people with guns, but people with training to go and help people in the midst of crises.
Or to de-escalate.
Work.
Yeah. Like, to de-escalate situations.
Because again, people want to joke.
More tense.
Of course.
Escalation, right? Yeah.
To de-escalate situations. And because, again, cops don't de-escalate. Apparently they're trained to, but routinely they show that they do not, because more often than not, police want to exert power, and because they want to exert power, they can't exert power if they de-escalate the situation. The kind of police officers who are good at that, I feel, would be better serving their communities elsewhere. Like, I think about my friend who's in the NYPD, and I think about how amazing a social worker he could be if he was given the adequate training, if he was given the tools that he would need to do that job, because of the kind of person that he is. I know where his heart is and I know where his mind is at. And if he had access to the kind of education that he would need to pursue that career choice, he would thrive in that, So I feel that there are other ways. The other thing is, when we discuss police abolition, we need to also discuss crime and what crime means and what it entails. So when we talk about safety, like, I don't necessarily feel safe around cops. I don't feel more safe when cops are around, because overwhelmingly, police do not stop crime. They prosecute crime. They act after the fact. People always go, oh, but who are you going to call when somebody breaks into your house? Motherfucker, if somebody breaks into my house, Nobody's showing up to my fucking apartment for at least a half hour, even if I call the cops. So realistically, what the hell good are they gonna do if somebody's trying to break into my home and kill me? If I call 911, I'm not even getting through for at least a couple minutes. And the time that it would take for me to adequately contact someone and give them the necessary information to come and save me, my ass is grass. So the notion that police like keep us safe, the crime's gonna happen. And if it's gonna happen, they're not gonna fucking stop it. They're gonna be around to make sure that somebody is held accountable. Now, when we talk about the nature of criminality, we need to understand that crime is a symptom. Crime is not endemic to a population. Crime is not something like a person is not a criminal. Crime is something a person does as a result of needs not being met, as a result of grotesque inequalities being multiplied over generations due to various, systems that are already in place. So in order to eliminate crime, we need to fix those aspects of society. It's one of the reasons that a lot of these pushes are multilateral. They need to be addressed in different ways and in different directions, because if you just try to focus on one area, you'll never fix the entire problem. You got to start thinking about different, like deeper questions. Why do people steal? Why do people commit crime? Like, if somebody is working in a job that pays them adequately, or if somebody is given a government stipend via universal basic income, and their basic needs are being met financially, and they're allowed to utilize their free time constructively in things that they want, things that they want to pursue, is that the kind of person that's going to continue to commit crime? Is that the kind of person that's going to commit petty larceny? If that person's needs are being met, if they're living in an egalitarian society that's looking out for their well-being, what incentive do they have to commit crime?
That's a good answer. Yeah.
Crime, crime as we understand it is only prosecuted and people are only held accountable for it in certain circles. If I walk over to the nearby 7-Eleven, grab a bag of chips off the counter and run, they're going to call the cops, they're going to look at the camera, they're going to find me, they're going to prosecute me for theft. If my employer refuses to pay for my overtime and instead keeps that money for themselves, I might be able to call somebody about it. I might be able to pursue a labor dispute, but that's going to take a tremendous amount of time and energy on my end. And even if I do pursue it, there's no guarantee that that company is going to be held accountable for it. Like, there is so much more to what we understand as crime and criminality. And when we start to really dig deep, we understand that there are one set of laws for common people, and there's a second set of laws for people who are in positions of power. Another set of laws for corporations, another set for government.
Totally.
So when we talk about the concept of police abolition, because for me it's a matter of police abolition. Oh, it's not defund the police, it's reform the police. No, there's no reforming that. You can't fix it. You got to burn it to the ground, and you got to start from scratch, because it's the only way you're going to get to something better. That discussion necessitates further discussions about the nature of crime, about how we create a truly equal society where people's needs are being met.
Yeah.
How we deal with those inequalities in a systemic way. So those changes always go hand in hand. It's why a lot of people kind of they shy away from the idea, because they think about it in very like black and white. Oh, well, if you just take away all the cops, there's going to be anarchy in the streets.
Yeah.
One, that's not true, because we've seen it not be the case. Like, I always love the fact that a few years ago, the NYPD was, because there were a bunch of petulant children, were like, if the mayor doesn't support us, then we're just not going to do our job. And then, like, they didn't do their job, and crime went down. Like statistically, crime went down in New York City because the police weren't doing their work. So, but again, take that and you got to extrapolate that data. If police aren't around to hold people accountable for a crime, whatever the hell that means, crime goes down. So people are living their lives and people are not getting harassed by police and people aren't being put in like heavy policing of urban communities is what increases crime in those communities. Like, if the police are constantly scrutinizing every possible fucking thing that everybody's gonna do, of course they're gonna find reasons to get people in trouble. Moreover, a lot of times, a lot of this stuff is just nonsense. Like, fucking Eric Garner would not have died if a cop hadn't been riding his ass about Lucy's, right? Like, is what he was doing technically illegal? Yeah, I guess, sure, you can't sell individual cigarettes on the corner, but like realistically, who is that man hurting? What is he doing wrong, right? And had a police officer not chosen to pursue that for the sake of legality, and in that circumstance had not chosen to escalate the situation and had not chosen to commit to an act of violence against that man, when that police officer already had a history with that man and being violent with that man, which people don't want to talk about, like that whole situation would have not have happened. It would have been a non-issue. So one of the things that we need to understand in the midst of that conversation is we define crime differently for different communities and different people, and that's not conducive to any kind of real kind of like growth in that area. It has to be a reimagining of what we need justice to look like. Because again, what I was mentioning before, overwhelmingly in this country, justice is punitive. Justice comes through punishment. If you don't punish somebody, justice hasn't been served.
Yeah.
That's, I'm not going to necessarily say it's barbaric, but it's definitely an unenlightened view of justice, in my opinion, anyway. My thing is, if I want people to improve, I want justice to be served, and I want to help them. I want them to not be in the same position. Because again, if somebody's in a fucking poor ass neighborhood and stealing shit to get by, and you lock that person up, which makes them even more poor, and then send them back to that community where they're still poor, what the hell is that person gonna do?
Actually, what you're talking about,
like,
we can really,
if you don't fix the problem, you're going to see that stuff happen. It's why recidivism is a problem. It's why that keeps happening. Like, we've shown study after study, or study after study has shown that locking people in prison doesn't work. It doesn't fix crime. It doesn't improve crime rates. It doesn't stop people from committing crime. It doesn't do anything except make people suffer unnecessarily. And all that suffering is happening without the problem being fixed in the first place. So if we're talking about the abolition of police, it's not just police, it's the prison system. It's reimagining all these things. It's creating a society where these things aren't necessary anymore. Because if you don't get to the root of that issue, you're just going to have the same thing happening over and over again. And you're going to have police going out of their way to get people in prisons, because those prisons to operate for profit, and that profit needs to go to corporations who have a vested interest in maintaining a certain population in prison. All that stuff goes in a circle. Goodness, the one show from College Humor, Adam Ruins Everything, did an episode about jails and about policing and about how it just doesn't work. And it's a great, concise breakdown of the complete failure of the American prison system. There are obviously much better, much more robust resources that you can go to for that to dig deeper. But the bottom line is that there are some issues, interpersonal issues, that are going to arise as we live in community. That is unavoidable. That's a reality of living among other people. But I don't want to live in a country or a world where the only thing maintaining any semblance of order is a man with a gun. Like, to me, that's not freedom. That's not living my best life. I don't think anybody's living their best life under those circumstances. And if we want that society, if we want to be in that truly free way of living, then we need to reimagine how these systems work, and we need to start questioning the validity of those systems as they stand.
No, it's. I'm sorry, Eric, but it's curious. It's really funny that what you're talking about, Dan, because on our side, this president that we have right now, he's concentrating all of these resources to these young people that were neglected or they were forgotten on past administrations or past governments. And when they ask him, "Hey, dude, we still have homicides, we still have cartels, we still have yeah. I'm not gonna go fight that like our old presidents all of a sudden grabbed all the fucking army and went all in to combat them." And nowadays, time gave us justice. Time now has proven all of these rumors that were running around among us about, for sure the government's linked with the cartels and and nowadays it's true. We have right now in Washington, they have our old security administrator when like 2 administrations before. He's right now being prosecuted for money laundering, being linked with the cartels. So all of these rumors now are true. Now they became true, and our president is like, yeah, we knew all of this time, but you know what? Let's go forward. But the people are no, dude. Let's go get those fuckers. We got the evidence. We got the facts. Let's go get them. And he's like, I'm a pacifist. You know what? Whatever happened, I want to concentrate from now on, and I'm going to invest on the young people so they don't have to go to the cartels, so they don't have to go do crime, so they don't have to go do this. I'm going to try and help them with scholarships for school. They can train with some people that have their businesses. I'm gonna give them money monthly so they train themselves with them, and eventually they can go work. So he's giving money to all of these kids and all of these youngins instead of having to go like, oh, you know what, fuck school, I'm gonna go to a cartel. I'm gonna go do. No, he's exactly doing what you're saying, Dan. He's concentrating on the root of the crime, the situation, the economic situation people are living in. And the opposition is like, no, what are you doing? You're concentrating. You're gonna make us broke, and all of it's people that had in a certain way a piece of the pie back then. My dad was in politics, so in a way I got to see a lot of this stuff from the inside, and nowadays when I see this happening, it's like I'm not they say AMLO lover. But I totally support this guy because of what he's doing. And after all of these years that we've been used to politics, it's equal to corruption. It's like, wait a second, this guy is actually fighting corruption. But it's very interesting. Go ahead, Ergy. We're going to say something.
And I think what you're saying in terms of the steps your president is taking, I think it's the right way. You can't solve everything at once. I mean, Mexico has a lot of problems, obviously, but you got to start somewhere. And what better way to start than, start with the young people and start giving people that are less privileged more opportunity so that slowly over time, the system, the dynamic can change. And no, that was a really thoughtful answer, Dan, to my original question of how policing can change, because you can't just look at crime black and white, like you said. And I think one of the major issues is just the division between the working class, the elites, and the opportunities that the people at the bottom are lacking. They're lacking a lot of opportunities, and many times desperation is what leads them to petty crimes. So I think just reimagining our society and not having so much money at the top, call it socialism or whatever you want, but spreading it out a little more for all people. It gets a little complicated when you have things like prisons for profit and all that, where you have certain established business models that rely on the inequality and on having people, at the bottom have less resources, less money, and all that. So I think it's a lot deeper than just crime. Please stop crime. It's if you really want to solve it, you're gonna have to abolish the current model as it is, and really start giving the people at the bottom, much like the president of Mexico is intending to do, more opportunities, giving them more a cut of the pie, so that they can also have. And I think psychologically, if there's more support, if there's more community support that way, it'll decentivize committing crime. Because more people have more opportunity. And I mean, some people might still do it for thrills or whatever, but I think that's the true answer. Starting from the bottom, giving people at the bottom more opportunity, and watching the paradigm slowly shift. And I think that will help. And it might take time, because I mean, all of this is really established. It's been around for a long time, but it has to take a will for a really better society. And a lot of people are going to be against that, because they're already making a profit with the way the system is, especially people in power.
Yeah,
exactly. The bottom down, they want to keep them a short leash. If you commit a little crime, we got to punish you, and it's about changing the whole dynamic, and that takes a lot of will, a lot of patience. But so it's definitely a little more complicated. But I definitely see what Dan was saying on the nature of crime, why crime happens, how cops tend to punish more, they get there after the fact. Maybe something in terms of neighborhoods, maybe something like having an amplified neighborhood watch program where you can look after each other. But then that comes to the question: will people take the time to work together more? Because people are in their own little bubbles many times, and they're just focused on themselves, on their phones and all that. And it might take a little effort in terms of getting to know your neighbors, being more able to watch after each other. It's going to take a whole mind frame change. But I see what you're saying, Dan, with what motivates crime, and it's in large part because of the current system that we have.
Yeah, 100% is the current system.
Yeah, it's what causes eventually people to do crime, right? The situation they end up in, because it's a chain reaction of whatever job they were neglected from, or education, or not enough support from the system, instead of just being abolished from it. But and Norma, let's start closing it. We're into almost 3 hours. Whoa, we're gonna break the record. But Norma, first of all, what did you think about our chat? And a last statement, if you want, or a last message to our friends on this side or our friends on your side that are kind of having a tough time probably deciding. But what would you have to say before we close it out?
Well, first, I definitely want to say that we touched on a lot of topics that are, I want to say, extremely important. And then also, just the fact that we were able to all get not just all of our opinions out, but we also got a lot of information, a lot of perspective we didn't think about, we hadn't considered.
True that. True.
And I also like that you would mention also the differences and or similarities of what's going on here between what's going on over in Mexico, because I know that I don't have a lot of information. I only get just some information of what's going on over there. So I honestly enjoyed this entire conversation, this entire talk. My last, I think thing that I want to say, definitely for people who might not know or really are having a tough time in regards to the upcoming election, I think it's extremely important to view your candidate's policies, and also just dig deep, do your research, and pick very carefully, because at the end of the day, whoever you do decide to vote for is going to basically have it's basically going to affect in the long run.
And it's going to be a tight one, right? I'm pretty sure the last one was really tight, and this one looks like it. But touching this subject, Eric, I'm going to leave Dan to close. He's going to be last since I know he's got a great closing statement. But Eric, what would you close our chat? I'm just kidding, man. I'm just. But
Yeah.
Eric, what did you think of the chat? I've been inviting you to a couple of them, and I know that now that it was in English, you felt a little bit more comfortable. But how did you feel, and what would you say to maybe someone that's indecisive right now, doesn't know which side to pick? I'm not telling you to pick this side, but
Yeah.
what would you recommend them?
Well, no, I really enjoyed the conversation. It was mostly political, like I thought it would be, since due to the nature and climate of our times right now. But no, I really enjoyed the conversation, and I really felt I learned a lot, especially the last part with replacing police and the nature of crime. But I would say that, man, it just inform yourself. Inform yourself. Right now, the internet provides you with so many different sources. Just take the time to really research and inform where your local politicians stand on things, how it's going to affect you, because it is going to, like Norma said, it is going to affect you for a very long time. And I mean, whether you like it or not, these people in charge, their policies do affect your life and your lifestyle and things that you might stand for. So really do your due diligence, do research, vote. As my mom said, fill out the ballots and then take them in person, if you will, because you don't know what's going on with the mail right now.
Yeah.
And just, whether you like it or not, stay involved, stay conscious of what's going on. Even if you're one of those people that hates politics, or I kind of used to be like that for a while, like they're all corrupt anyway. Like you become a little kind of
Yeah. You don't believe in it.
Yeah, and so like apathetic, right? And so just really inform yourself, because this is a really, really important time just for the future of this country, the future of our lifestyle, our livelihoods, what we stand for. And no, I thought this was a really good podcast, really, really good, especially for this time in our history.
No, and in a way, that decision affects our country also, Mexico.
Yeah,
It always affects us. So in a way, eventually it kind of gives us the guideline of how it's going to be for the rest of the years that our president's going to have, and eventually when he leaves, because it's only a couple more that he's got, like what, 4 left or 3.5. But he's trying to set the little seeds so this continues. He's like, hey, there's no re-election on our side, so we abolished that a long time ago. But yeah, I just wanted to mention the opposition right now is doing this protest. It's really funny because they're using like tents, like little tents you use to go camping outside, and they're putting a lot of tents that they're empty. They're just putting a lot of like around like as if they were a lot, but they're just like 100. But it's really crazy. It's funny in a way. It's funny. Like grab your popcorn and have fun, because the opposition right now is like, really, dude, that's what you're going to try to do. But Dan, it's your turn. What did you think about the conversation we had? We missed Omar. We left. Kevin might join us in the future. But what do you think about the way we get these talks, and what would you leave as a closing message for all these people that are probably indecisive right now and on which side to go through?
I mean, realistically, I'm glad for these kind of conversations. I'm glad for the opportunity to kind of speak on these things. I'm not an expert. I don't pretend to be, but as I've gotten older, and as I've realized that politics really is a full contact sport, it's become imperative to me to be informed. It's become imperative to me to maintain a certain level of intelligence and just general understanding about what's going on. We're really we're approaching, at least in my opinion, a crisis point in this country, and we're either going to, for me, it's socialism or barbarism. For other people, it's a matter of, fascism or not. And I think in either instance, that argument is valid. More than anything else, I'm a big fan of voting your conscience. I'm not going to tell people to vote for Biden because that's not my job. What I will say, to piggyback on what Norma said, is get informed. Make sure that you're actually looking at policy. One of the things that I've been saying most recently is that a lot of people on the left who don't like Biden aren't being uh, are being a little bit disingenuous by saying that he doesn't have a platform. He does have a platform. It's not a great one, but it's there. And I feel like if you haven't yet, you have an obligation to go online, look at his platform, see what he has to say, and really decide if that's something you can get behind. Politics isn't a matter of personality. It's not about whether or not you like that person. It's about what they stand for because that's your representative in government.
Yeah.
Mhm.
To that end, you know, it is very clear that there is at least a moderately better choice in the upcoming election.
Mhm.
You can take that however you're gonna take it and run with it, but ultimately a vote is a vote for whoever you vote for. You know, abstaining from this vote, abstaining from the election is not a vote for the opposition. That does not work. That logic does not hold. Voting for a third party candidate or voting Green Party is not a vote for the opposition. Again, that logic does not hold. You decide what you're going to do and you decide how much skin you're going to have in the game. But whatever you do, acknowledge that there are deep and meaningful ramifications to those actions that are going to be felt not just by you, but by those around you and people you might not even know. So I
Totally.
guess, my admonition to anybody who hasn't, you know, I don't know, picked a side or, I mean, it sucks that we're getting to this point in American politics, but this was unavoidable. We've seen the schism between left and right grow stronger, deeper, and wider every election, every year. Um, that really is the bottom line. Vote like your life depended, and vote as if other people's lives depend on it, because it's not just about you.
Mhm.
If I was gonna leave with like a final thought or like just like a general thing is, we can have a better society than what we have right now. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of
Mhm.
effort. It's going to take a lot of creative solutions to very intricate problems. But if we want it, then we're going to have to put in the legwork. There's
Mhm.
no getting around it. There's no shortcuts to it. If what we want is a better world, then a better world is what we're going to get so long as we're willing to do our due diligence. And for some people that have already been doing that work, that's a no brainer. For other
Mhm.
people who think they've been doing that work, maybe that's a wake up call to realizing that they have a little more skin in the game and they should be pushing a little harder than they have been. But the bottom line is that you can't afford to not be involved. I used to be one of
Mhm.
those people too that was like, oh, I don't like politics. It's all the same and blah, blah, blah. I don't like it. And then I grew up. And that's really the bottom line.
Mhm.
No, like, and I say that I say that with all disrespect to everybody who still feels that way, because I can't imagine the kind of privilege that I would need to hold myself outside of that situation and to imagine that it's not important and I don't need to care.
Mhm.
Like I refuse to allow myself to obtain that level of arrogance again. I refuse to allow my ego to be at that place in my life where it once was, where I felt that I was bigger than that problem and I was bigger than that discussion. Like I'm too grown for that.
Mhm.
I've matured too much. I've learned too much to allow myself to regress to that point. So, if you don't care about politics, start caring, because there are a lot of people out there whose lives literally depend on it.
Totally,
Well said.
totally. Yeah, in our in our country, we've had even people that passed away boat, like they're already passed to a new, better life, but all of a sudden they still boat. So we had even that gone through fraudulent elections, but yeah, nowadays it's totally different, and this new change that we're living is linked to what you guys are living. That's why I was super curious, and I love all of the points of view that we had from Omar and you guys, and appreciate the time you gave us. But and yeah, go out to vote, because we usually set it on this side, and I bet it's in everywhere. Everywhere they say, "Hey, did you vote?" No, so then you can't complain. Shit, dude. Shut up and go do whatever. But if you don't vote, you don't get to complain or like criticize or say anything. But go do your job. That's the only thing you got to do. So it actually depends, as you said. A lot of people depend on it, and in this case, us, your neighbors, we also depend on it. So it's a big thing for us too. So I wanted to hear your points of view, Dan. I appreciate the time you have. You have a lot more of stuff we can talk about. So we got to plan another episode in the future, because actually Norma told me, I think you're going to need another episode in the future. but yeah, now I know what she meant. But I would love to eventually, Kevin. I hope eventually Kevin gets everything sorted out with his cell phone, because he's in the same channel we are, and he has a lot of things he would love to share with us. And Norma, cousin, thank you very much again for your time. I know you have to wake up very early tomorrow, so we actually passed our record. We went to 3 hours. Eric,
Yeah, did we hit the record?
yeah, we did. I think it is. Yeah, I think we but Eric, thanks again for joining us, and thank you for taking the decision of being able to be here with us. We love all the points of views.
Eventually, man.
And if people didn't get to see it, it's going to be recorded on the link that we sent to you before. So again, thank you very much, Dan, and congratulations again. And hopefully we'll be able to see the wedding soon. And Eric, again, thank you very much. I hope you guys have a good night. Go rest. You're going to need it. And I hope you have a good weekend also, since tomorrow it's Friday. So it's the weekend, baby. So again, thank you very much. Have a good night, and later.